Sure.
What's going on, guys? This is the Cloud9 podcast, season 2, episode 13. The 2021 offseason is pretty hectic, actually. You know, you have Rekkles, who's on Carmine Corp now. Rekkles is not even in the LEC. You know what's crazy? We've been watching League of Legends since 2014, and the fact that Rekkles won't actually be playing on a European team after all these many years is just crazy. Bjergsen finally leaves TSM. He's going to be playing on Team Liquid. You also have Cloud9 going for a new AD carry in Berserker, actually. LS joins Cloud9 as their new head coach. So, you know, there's been a lot of big changes, actually. There was the rumor that Mad Lions didn't want to sell Humanoid to Fnatic. And I always tell people this, though. You're not going to ever want to sell your best players to your rival org. Like, that would make any sense because you're just making your rival org stronger. Like, come on. Like, I don't get why people get ragged on for that. That's such a stupid concept. Like,
you know what? I mean, it would be okay if you didn't say, I remember in a tweet specifically, he said, you guys are soulless and heartless. We'd never put Rekkles' buyout at $2 million or anywhere near that. And he put it at 1.5 million. Either he thinks 1.5 is very far away, or he just completely lied.
Like, is that really an unfair buyout for the caliber of player that Rekkles actually is?
Whether or not it is up for debate, but he consistently,
he has to
every single year, he lies about his buyout being set at a specific price range. Every single year. Every single year, he lies about something, and that's on him. Like, he should not have said that if he didn't want to put the buyout any lower than that. He said it's not going to be anywhere near 2 million. And put it at 1.5 million. That's goofy.
He also, because G2 ended up selling Wonder to Fnatic, actually. So you're thinking to yourself, like, okay, they want to sell their players, but they want to sell them for like exuberant amounts of money. You know, he sold Wonder. I guess if you translate it to euros, he comes out to like 500 to 600K. But people got to understand this, dude, is like, I get Adam wasn't the best top laner, right? I get that. But if you buy Wonder, you're buying the Wonder right now. You know, you're buying Wonder as he is now. And he was bad the entire year.
The problem is that you have the Adam as he is right now, and that's actual garbage. So I'm not surprised they wanted to go with something else.
Was he better than what Wonder was offering in G2?
That's fair. He's better than Wonder one specific year. And you could say that this year is indicative of how he's going to play next year. But, I mean, he's had a lot of good years in comparison to this one bad year. You could assume that there's a possibility of it. I would buy Wonder on the possibility of a bounce back than rather have to play with Adam another year. Like, that's how I would look at it.
Well, why did you like Adam when he was on Fnatic?
Why did I like Adam on Fnatic? I didn't. I told you.
Why did you not like Adam on Fnatic?
I think inherently the top laners inside of all of you were pretty weak. It was their weakest role. I mean, that coming into the Worlds, I told you that was going to be their weakest role because there is something wrong specifically with how the top laners has drastically changed, at least the top landscape. There's a lot more laning prowess inside of so what I would say is the best top laners inside of EU were more laning top laners in Broken Blade and other similar characters like him, but a lot of the staple top laners in Wonder and similar, like the ones that had been good enough in the previous years, were not great this year. So I think instead of actually having Adam, who was probably top 5 top laner, be an impressive stat, it's only because the other ones had regressed so far this year. I don't know.
But it's one of those things where, like, you know, he comes in from the ERLs, right? And Fnatic do get to Worlds with him. They even actually make the finals of the summer split for the LEC this past year, actually. You know? Like, he had to have been at somewhat of a decent level for that to happen, though.
I don't think so. I mean, I think what it came down to is the fact that they had such a synergy going on with jungle mids, like the way they rotated around the map and stuff, and we had Upset just being that high caliber player inside of team fights, that they were able to kind of ignore the weakness in top. And even it's not even a weakness in top lane, because EU as a whole this was their worst year of top laners, which is like usually one of their stronger roles. It was kind of not up there this year. But Adam was able to compete with most of the top laners because the competition wasn't too high, on top of the fact that they didn't really have a comp or kind of team mindset that rotated around Adam being a big part of it. So when it came down to it, Adam's weaknesses weren't shown because the team didn't really allow him to be a big part of it. He I mean
He like literally would sack his lane every single time because he knew he couldn't beat his enemy opposition like at all. I remember that a
Worlds
lot. That's a
maybe.
lot of their games.
Not
It
too
was in the
much
split
in
too, remember?
EU. I mean, yeah, I guess,
Like
but
during
like
the split, he would like sack his lane every single time he couldn't win against someone and just go roam. That's what he did every single time, unless he was playing Olaf or Set, or he played Cho'Gath a few times too against Misfits as well. So,
I mean, I liked what Fnatic did this year. I think their mindset for the game, again, even though I think they arguably got a worse comp, like player set, like during last season, they had a really good mindset for the game when they tried to rotate around the map with Niski and stuff like that. But they never were able to get anything really rolling. Like the only reason they made the finals is because the second best team every single
what's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
second best team inside of the season wasn't able to compete. Like every single time we went to the playoffs, Rogue won, what is it, 3 games total? They went 3 and like 17 inside the playoffs that year.
This is a fun fact.
Or 16.
Rogue won as many best of 5s as like G2 did actually this year. Well, one more because they beat them earlier in spring. So Rogue only won one more best of 5 than G2, who had a super team actually. Isn't that crazy?
We can say whatever we want about G2 having a super team. They didn't this year. It was just,
I mean, on paper they did.
On paper at the beginning of the year they did. By the end of the year we realized it wasn't actually a super team.
Well, I told you, like they have weaknesses that can be exposed. It just depends on how the teams expose them.
They didn't get exposed. They just were garbage. I mean, Wonder was a bad player.
Caps played pretty bad in the regular seasons, but he played good in the playoffs, though.
Good is a stretch. He played good against specific mid laners, but for the most part, I don't think overall he played that well. Caps wasn't that good during the season. Wonder was garbage. Mickey X was really bad. Rekkles didn't make sense on the team. I think he played well, but it just didn't work out. I mean, we had Jankos played well.
He played bad in spring.
He did play bad in spring, but he picked it up in summer. So I think all around they had a pretty, what I would assume going into the season was the best team in EU. And when it came down to actually playing on paper, this team was not playoff ready. They weren't able to put anything together.
It's the same thing I said last year before they had the team, is if he doesn't synergize with them, it's going to be bad on the Rift, because Perks as a person and his personality synergize with these guys. It's like, if you put someone in to your friend group that doesn't synergize, then like the vibe becomes off. And I think that type of thing stretched actually into the game. They couldn't like be themselves around Rekkles the way they could around Perks.
See, like I don't want to make any
actually affected their game.
I don't want to make any insights because there's no actual ideas. Like these are all just impressions.
Or
these
maybe,
are all implications.
Or it could have been this way too. It could have been a thing of like they never really could figure out a way how to play the game, because their drafting was really bad this year too. Oh my god, the drafting was awful.
It seems like what I would actually give credit to Fnatic of 2020. Their best quality was their ability to adapt midway through a series.
They adapted really fast. Really fast.
They did. They adapted extremely fast in every single series that they were in, pretty much. And I think that I would give that credit to the coaching staff of the previous year. And then they got rid of that coaching staff and a lot of their strengths that I would say that were short of. Because they didn't have that strong of a roster. Like the roster wasn't inherently that strong inside of 2020, but they played the game in an extremely intelligent way, and they were able to adapt mid-series, and that's what got them to be able to be so successful. And instead, they switched it to a play style again that would have been more suited for the previous year with that coaching staff, because they were actually they had a mindset for the game, and it wasn't just a lot of good players meshed onto a decent team that had to come online at the right time to make it work. Instead of like a powerhouse that doesn't actually beat the best teams in the world, because again, Western players just don't have what it takes. They had a mindset that was able to kind of rotate around the map and try to actually accomplish what a lot of us would want a Western team to do, which is instead of trying to mimic and like what NA does every single year, they mimic the Eastern teams and try to play their play style, which they'll never be as good at.
But don't people rag on EU for having their own play style, right?
No one rags on EU for having their own play style. But EU is inherent, like just historically, really, they're always unique. They usually have a really good read on the meta, even if they aren't the best. Even like by the end of the year, it always comes down
to like their players just end up always being worse than the opposition. It's not even them themselves. They're just worse than the Eastern players half the time. And that's nothing they're doing wrong. It's just like, but that's just the nature of sports, though. Like I told people this analogy. Let's say we have League of Legends teams. Let's say I'm Cloud9, and let's say you're EDG, right? If your team is better than mine, all your 5 players, there's any way possible mine should be winning ever, unless it depends on the meta, the patch. and champions itself and which of my players can adapt. But
I
I have to
mean,
do significantly more to beat you than you to beat me. You 9 times out of 10 should win all the time.
I think patches. Usually, I would say patches. Like I feel like they haven't really made much of it. The meta hasn't shifted really drastically in years. It's
There's
really
been
just been similar.
decent chips.
No,
Like
there's not been
for
any shifts. Like
SOFM this year, he couldn't really play Graves or
he
Nidalee
just
the
was
same way
bad
that
this
other
year.
players could. I mean,
Graves and Nidalee were both. I mean, Nidalee wasn't too much of the meta, but Graves was in the meta last year.
like the meta with Udi or Graves and Nidalee, he really couldn't. You would think SOFM would thrive in that kind of meta, but he really didn't, though. Maybe it was the team environment. Maybe it was just that.
I do want to say that SOFM during the season 6 year, season 5 year, I think what he shined the most on was tank supportive junglers, which that were relying on CCing and stuff like that. And I'd argue that he was probably the best jungler in the world at those seasons, even though he didn't really make it to Worlds. I think he was still the strongest at his position in the world. But going into this season, I think that one of the biggest problems I saw was his aggressiveness was not, it wasn't catered towards anything. I think he got too used to having a support that would roam around the map with him, and he still made those same plays, but he didn't actually adjust to not having that secondary player.
He seems like a player that needs that type of leadership to actually be able to function.
I mean,
at the highest level.
I would say more so the play style that he plays and has played all of these years doesn't work anymore with how much mobility there is around the map and how many options there are to make your way around the map, and really how beneficial it is for your support to be out of lane. It really doesn't help that he doesn't actually he still plays the same play style because he doesn't have those players that help him in try and do what he wants to do. And he needs to adjust to that, but he doesn't. He has a mindset for the game that doesn't really shift. And that was his weakness.
You need a more vocal. So how do you fix a team like them? You need a more vocal support. Right?
You don't get a more vocal support. It's not about shot calling. I don't really think that's one of the biggest problems, although I do think shot calling is probably the support and jungler's role inside of the early game. I think one of the biggest problems they had actually was that the jungler and the support weren't on the same page ever. I mean, the support rarely left lane. That was like one of the strengths of Suning the previous year was the fact that they always rotated around the map as a squad, and they did not do that this year. Suning was more so like a individual show of Angel and all those people kind of trying to put things together on their own. Like
it was a thing of like the solo laners tried to actually carry games as hard as they could, but they had no team cohesion without Sword Art. And I told people this too. The same thing happened with Rogue for a little bit after they lost Vander at the beginning of this year too. Was that even though like a shot calling support like Sword Art and Vander might leave your team and might be like less mechanically skilled, the actual amount of communication and valuable leadership skills you lose to have a better mechanical player, does that really weigh out though? Like, does that really weigh out better?
Will. I mean, the reality is, even in regular sports, mindset is 90% of the game. Like, even if you like, a lot of people are talented in somewhat similar skill set, and they can play on both of their best days. A lot of these players can match up well with each other. But what it comes down to is whether or not how often your best days come out, which is, again, something that comes down to team chemistry, how much you enjoy being around the other people, and how well you guys synergize and gel together. That is a problem that a lot of these teams are kind of seeing kind of come to fruition, because we have an actual problem of leadership. Like, there are some leadership problems inside a lot of these players. A lot of these players are kind of playing the game in a separate way, and they're not actually, again, what I would say is enjoying the game outside of the game with each other. You really do have to like the people you play with to be able to enjoy it, to be able to be good. I wouldn't say always. A lot of teams can make it work as just a job and just as they're told what to do from the coaching. But for the most part, I feel like a lot of these teams, especially in the Western teams, if they're not having fun with each other, they aren't good. Like G2 loved each other. All these teams, Fnatic hated each other this year and they imploded. Like all these teams that
TSM roster that you love in season 6, they all loved each other. They loved playing each other.
They also didn't have the mindset to be able to make it work, because when they started losing, there was nobody on that team.
No one in NA really could touch them. And then when they started losing, they didn't really know how to actually get past that hurdle.
It was more so that mindset. They didn't have that mindset of a leader on their team to be able to say, hey, we're supposed to be able to bounce back from this. No one was taking up that spot. They all just thought they were their own individual players. even
But
though
they
they
never even
okay.
were in losing positions most of the time to ever like work on those situations either. Like you have
Regardless,
to have those situations to work on them
I
to
mean,
be a better
they came
team.
through. They came through on gold leads sometimes. There were some situations where they were down in gold that they were able to come back, but never really that much. It wasn't really
Yeah,
ever a big goal to get. Like the problem and the reason they lost is because when teams actually started doing well against them, they didn't have the
they
capabilities
didn't even
like
know what to
mindset
do.
wise. No, it's just like
I remember like there were some games at Worlds in 2016 and 2017 when they started losing, they just didn't know what to do. They just actually
I mean, I've
stopped
seen
playing the
them
game
come back at a lot of those situations in NA. The problem was that they don't
because you are playing in an
have.
A though.
Well, I don't. That's not what I'm saying. The problem was that they didn't have that mental leader to be able to bring them back from the brink, like Perks had. Perks was for G2 all those years. Like
Mhm,
all these teams, even when they do poorly, if you don't have that one
mhm,
person trying to bring you back from being angry and frustrated,
mhm.
you're never going to be able to bounce back.
Okay,
If you
so
let,
you're saying it wasn't them just that bad as a team, and you're
I don't
saying
think.
it,
No, I definitely don't
and
think
you're
they're that.
also saying it's not just based on how bad NA was. You think they just lacked a leader,
I do.
and that
I mean,
really threw across the
I think
team.
TSM that year was better than RNG, and I think they should have got out of that group, but they didn't, and that's just not something I can argue. It they didn't get out of the group, and I think they should, but that's only speculation.
Mm.
It's only what I think. Like TSM's mindset for the game was that year, and a
Well,
lot of
then
the
how
what
do you work with this year too? Because like you wouldn't Mad Lions be like the same similar thing?
I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with Mad Lions. I mean, I don't know whether or not they're good or bad behind the scenes because they did bounce back in week 2 and they were able to bring it back, and a lot of them were
Mhm.
smiling. So I don't know. I don't know if they have that leadership or you don't really have to have leadership as long as you guys are somewhat able
Because
to.
that's my thing is they were in losing positions and they clearly have had that in the LEC. Because like I think the caliber of competition you have in your region will strengthen you for like international competition though. Because my biggest problem with why the TSM roster never worked was because NA was so bad in that year based because it was just what TSM, Cloud9, and Immortals were like the best teams. And CLG kind of was still there. They were kind of like I think they were just burnt out after
I think
winning
Immortals looked
MS.
good that year.
Yeah, I just think CLG was burnt out after playing Spring, MSI Finals, Summer. Like, if you just discount those teams, and it was pretty bad in 2016. And I
I
think
mean,
NA being that bad, TSM never were in positions to get challenged to the point where they could themselves improve.
the
Like, the
problem
competition was just so
themselves
bad.
is that
And
we actually
Cloud9 lost to them
see
all year. During that year, Cloud9 lost to them all year. So,
we can actually make again in like our interpretations of what we think the reason why TSM went. But again, we saw differences in playstyles inside of
Mhm.
TSM, and it wasn't forced by superior playstyles. It was like we saw Doublelift instead of trying to poke when somebody was going for a CS, instead he would stand back more often because he didn't want to be the reason they lost. And
Mm.
there's a lot of those players on that team. And TSM actually struggled with the fact that they couldn't handle the nerves that came with being on the big
Mhm.
stage. I mean, Doublelift has literally been terrible every single year at Worlds until the very previous,
His
his
best year
very
was
most
season
recent
9. His best year was
season
season 9.
nine.
Yeah.
Season nine. I
Yeah.
almost said season 10, but he was garbage. Um, I
Season
think,
9 when he
yeah,
actually when they beat IG. That's why I told people though. People gotta realize IG was the best team in the world and Team Liquid beat them. And that's with Doublelift on it. Like out of all people, Doublelift was on that team. That's crazy to think about. That was
Doublelift
like one of
was
the
very
biggest
good.
upsets ever. Like I think that's part of my top 2 upsets ever. The other one would be the G2 versus RNG one. Because like the Team Liquid versus IG, because like you had, if you look at Worlds 2018 and you saw the way RNG were playing at week 2, you could be like, okay, maybe G2 has a shot here at beating them. That IG versus TL series, no one thought they'd win. Like you'd be lucky if you maybe stayed competitive in a game against them. But is that mindset or is that the other better team just mentally imploding on themselves?
I
You
mean,
know?
why do you get randomly louder every once in a while? I think one of the big things I think actually I like about Cloud9, I mean, Invictus Gaming that year is because of the fact, I mean, again, first of all, they played with Duke. That is one big problem that I think actually stemmed from IG inside of the group stage. They played a lot of games with Duke because I think the Shy just had not previously been on the team enough. He had been hurt a lot of this spring and summer split, and then he came back and he was just gelling back into the team. I think a lot of it came down to the problem that they had one specific play style, but no one could stop in that play style. Like you had to shut down one of either the Shy and Rookie, and even if you shut one of them down, the other one was going to pop off, and they still had a very consistent bot lane. Like
Mhm.
there was nothing you could really do to stop Invictus Gaming from being able to be arguably like it going to that point where you couldn't actually stop them anymore because their snowballing effect was going to happen with either top or bot lane, and you had to stop it. You couldn't gank bot. IG
you
got
can't.
cocky, and I mean, I'll agree with that. IG did get cocky. That was one actual problem with IG. They didn't have the ability to bounce back. I mean, not really bounce back, but they didn't expect to lose to Team Liquid, and it kind of snowballed from there because they disrespected
people
them.
remember that MSI 2019, they beat SKT in the fastest game ever. They beat them in like 14 minutes. Remember when Sona and what was that champion? Sona and that one other guy was in the bot lane. Remember when SKT tried playing that composition and IG just crushed them? Yeah, it was Sona Taric. Yeah, SKT tried playing that and they just absolutely just railed. It was like they made SKT lose in the fastest game ever. Like that's crazy to think about. Like they actually were a pretty good team. And then they just kind of just imploded on themselves.
Imploding, I guess. I mean, I think IG. I mean, Team Liquid wasn't that bad that year. I mean, they still had a lot of solid pieces.
Compared to their competition, they were pretty bad. Compared to the field of competition around them, they were bad.
I mean, even in their group, they weren't that bad. Besides maybe the best team in the group. I mean, there wasn't actually a problem with the team that much. I mean, they had a good roster. They just had a terrible mindset for the game, and that's why they couldn't actually adapt. They had no adaptability. I think Team Liquid taking a game off IG is not crazy because Invictus Gaming was a very extremely
volatile team.
Yeah, they were volatile is probably a better word. They were actually they would usually 90% of the time the Shy would pop off and stuff like that. But a game like the Shy, what we've seen in a lot of years recently is his similar play style is he essentially continually runs it down, but he'll also get like 20 kills, so he'll go like 20 and 20. Like he draws a lot of attention in the top lane. He's able to demand a lot of resources and stuff like that. But when he gets put behind, he's worthless sometimes. I mean, he'll still try and play that play style.
He was always going like 0-8 every single game. He would go 0-8 every game.
He would do that, but I mean, again, a lot of teams started ganking him a ton because he was a big problem.
It's just every game he would just be 0-8. I don't know how that's even possible, and he would still actually out mechanic his enemy opposition while being.
I mean, he doesn't ever stop playing aggressively, and that's something that the Shy, and that's an exploitable weakness of his, is the fact that he will always try to go in even when he's behind.
The LPL exposed Nuguri's weakness like that too. He tried doing the same thing in the LPL, it just didn't work out the same way.
I mean, Nuguri was very good.
Same playstyle. Him and the Shy are like two sides of the same coin. They have the exact same playstyle. But their weaknesses is if you play that aggressive, you can punish that over aggressive tendency. And I never knew why teams never would do that though.
It's because
it's a clear weakness you can punish.
So if you gank top lane inside of IG in that year, you're worthless because he's the mid lane is going to snowball, and you can't ban him out because you have to ban both of them out. So essentially, what you have to do is gank one of the lanes, and then the other solo lane is going to pop off. You can't gank enough of both of them enough. If they counter gank, you're probably going to lose it because they have better quality players in that role. I mean, we saw them do that. That's actually how Fnatic was able to take a game off IG. Was them consistently playing. That was with Duke though. I'm saying they were able to take games off of IG because they were constantly able to gank Rookie, and they still couldn't make Caps have as much of an impact. He still was only a quarter of the player of Rookie, even with Rookie being down 0-70.
And this is like our best Western mid laner at the time too.
Because there's just a big discrepancy. There's really nothing you can do besides trying to snowball in a specific lane and trying to push that lane advantage into something before the mid game rolls around and they have the items to be able to contest. Like the game itself right now, again, specifically this season, is even less. There's a lot more combative ways to stop a snowball, but inside of the early seasons with tower plating being introduced, there was no counteractive play to tower plates. Like they would essentially, if you got a lead, you're able to snowball into a lot of tower plates, into objectives, and you would have like a 10,000 gold lead in the span of like a 10-minute frame where you had gotten a lead at. And there's nothing really that you could have done to stop it because once they got that lead, you didn't have the items to stop them. There's no inbuilt bounty system like there is now in League. There's all these things that actually, again, there was the kill bounty, but I mean, that's always existed. There was no actual way to get back into the game, but now the Riot has realized that they want the game to be fast-paced, but they also don't want the other team to be completely unable to come back when somebody gets a double kill at 2 minutes in the game. It's not over anymore.
Okay,
Um,
so since you haven't been here for quite some time in my life, just like my dad, what did you think about Worlds 2021?
I enjoyed it. It was really fun. I didn't the teams I didn't expect to win, and that's not something I have a problem with. I always
Mhm.
like surprising things to happen. It's a lot more enjoyable that way. I mean, I think Team Liquid and 100 Thieves could have done a little bit better. They turned it on too late and they adapted into the world scene a little too late. They were, I mean, Cloud9 was probably the worst out of the NA teams at Worlds, but
By
they were able
probably
to
they
get
were.
they were, but they were able to get out. And there's nothing you could say. They did get out and the other two didn't, so that's respectable at the very least. But
Mhm,
100 Thieves put it together. They were able to take games off EDG, who ended up winning Worlds, and like Team Liquid was able to compete in a group that they really should have got out of. I don't know how they did so poorly towards the end of it, but they started off um, getting that game off of Mad
just
Lions, and they're doing
mid
pretty
lane
well. And
diff. That's
yeah,
just the mid. It's just BDD was just playing so good. Like
I mean,
I
it's not
don't
even just that they lost to Mad Lions the second week, and
know.
Jensen's supposed like he's good enough to compete there. So like the problem wasn't a roster problem; it was the fact that they just weren't good enough to compete on that
Mhm,
stage by the second week because they just again they didn't with Jad on the team. I think I expected Jad to be able to combine. I mean, to kind of put more effort into going to 1-3-1 comps, but that didn't come in at the beginning of
mhm,
the year, and they sat him. Obviously, Jat and Alfari had different mindsets for the game, and that's why Jat got sat from the group.
mhm,
Like, I think Alfari should have made that team better, but they didn't get better because of the fact that the coaching staff wasn't able to work with what Alfari was bringing to the table, or didn't really attempt to. They didn't really bring rosters that I mean, or comps that I thought would suit Alfari into the games very often. I mean, yeah, the 1-3-1 comps expedite how fast a team comes online because of the fact that
mhm,
you're able to use the slight gold advantage you have in top lane and kind of snowball it into constantly having pressure on the side lane and then being able to TP with that advantage. While whereas the enemy has to uh, consistently has to respond to your push while also being able to TP because so you keep them out of fights and it's
mhm.
essentially a 4v4 with you winning out in the side lane pushes constantly. But
But
they rarely did that. I mean,
even if they had a shot at getting out, LNG literally threw their chances of making the knockout stage by how badly they played in that second game against Mad Lions. Because
it
like
doesn't.
that's the first time that's happened at Worlds outside of 2017. A four-way tie, they literally had a four-way tiebreaker. They were all playing so badly, they just took games off each other. They were all evenly skilled. That's how badly it turned
I
out.
think by the end of the week, I think Gen G was obviously the
Junior's
best team
obviously
in
like
that group,
the best team, but it
and
only was because BDD and Ruler kept them. It was only just because of that. Because Clay did not play that good, actually.
it's. I mean, I guess. I mean, it's not even just that. Once I mean, like the Korean team's exponent, like they're just so much faster this year, and that was respectable because they actually had a better mindset for the game.
Mhm.
We saw SKT being the fastest team in the world this year.
Yeah.
At Worlds, they were substantially the fastest team. Team Liquid also sped up. Like there's a lot of faster paced teams that usually Team Liquid and SKT were very slow last year, and it just kind of changed, which was really nice to see. But especially seeing SKT do so good when they had like 70 rosters this year was a nice, surprising thing to
Well,
see.
why did you think the LPL technically exploded during Worlds 2021?
I mean, their best team, in my opinion, coming into Worlds was FPX. So I think that them not doing well was a surprising factor to a lot of people. They had a really good mindset for the game,
Mhm,
but they were really just not anybody. They didn't rotate around the map as quickly as I expected. They were
mhm,
getting outperformed in lanes that really didn't expect to happen, like Doing B being the worst mid laner in that group was surprising to me.
mhm,
I mean, it's all comes down to like we don't actually know what's going to happen on the day. A lot of these teams could be better, but if you don't perform on the day, it doesn't really matter. And the reason a lot of them exploded is because, first of all, I mean, LPL was very much overrated going into this year. They've been really good these past previous years, but they weren't as good as people made them out to be. They were not the by far and away
mhm.
definitive best team in the world because again, a lot of the teams had more so like a lot of these hyper aggressive tendencies instead of the like the again I know the slow pace stuff doesn't work but hyper aggressiveness with no actual like
Thought
uh
to it.
no thought to it. Yeah, it ends up you can actually take advantage of that by either
Mhm,
responding to it or trying to rotate around the map. And that is something that a lot of people couldn't do to EDG, and that's why they're the most successful. But the other teams just were bad. I mean, I think FPX had a good mindset for the game, but they didn't show that on the stage. And then the other two teams just weren't as good as people thought they were.
It's kind of weird to say. It's kind of weird to say they imploded or like failed, but like EDG did win, but EDG looks so sloppy compared to like Damwon. Like I could see why people thought Damwon were going to crush them though. Now my reasoning was that EDG actually had good players in the key positions they needed as well. Like Flandre was like arguably the best top laner. Okay. He was better than Khan. Then you also had Scout who could match up to Showmaker, and they had like arguably the best or second best ADC at the tournament. So you had Viper. So like they had good players too. Like you even said yourself, you only need 3 good players to win at the time.
Yeah, but it doesn't come down to a comparative. This guy's as good as this guy. You don't do that. You don't go to a league and compare the 5 players because that's just dumb. That's not a good way to do it. It might be a good upside. But it's not a good way to look at games, and that's why a lot of people didn't expect it. No one thought that EDG's roster was that much worse. No one expected that. No one even said they were. They had a lot of good players, but their mindset for the game was not smart at the beginning of the year.
All their games were really sloppy.
They were really sloppy, and especially at Worlds, they were a lot worse than everybody expected it to. So going into the finals, they looked substantially worse than EDG. If they had played on equal terms to what they played in the semis finals, both of them, EDG would have lost. But EDG didn't go in.
Like EDG had substantially really good prep against specific teams they knew they could take out. That's the only reason why they won the summer split before World started.
I mean, it all came down to JJ just outperforming. I mean, that is really what it is, and it's an outlier. Like, you can say whatever you want, but the actual situation was JJ was put in positions by himself, which he doesn't usually do, where he outperformed Canyon. And that's not something anybody thought going into that tournament. It's not something you can expect and say, see, I told you. No one thought that. No one said going into this game, I don't think there's a single person in the world that was like, you know what? I think JJ might even equalize the lane with Tarzan and be or Canyon and just be just almost as good as him. No one even thought that. They thought it was going to be a massive discrepancy in the jungle and that it was going to be made up in the lanes maybe, and they would have been able to snowball that into a forced team fight because that was what EDG did. They were able to make team fights work in their favor. JJ did not do that. He just won. He just smacked everybody around in that game and was able to outperform pretty much the entirety of Damwon's roster and was unarguably the finals MVP in my opinion. Like there's arguments to be made for a lot of players, but JJ overperforming, you can make the argument that EDG had prepped him all year for Canyon's pathing for specific comps. And that's something you could arguably say. I mean, maybe Canyon pathed similarly in every single lane, so they were able to know where to gank.
Because most of the time, it's always going to come down to good prep anyway for a best of 5.
I mean,
like, what else? How else would they be able to beat them? Because like if they're playing standard, Damwon just crushes them. Probably if they play that best of 5 back like 10 times, I'm pretty sure they only win that one time. But to be fair, that's the only time you need to win. Is that one time?
I agree.
You know,
I mean, I think Damwon really underestimated. I mean, they really didn't think a lot of EDG, and it was very apparent during that series. They didn't respect EDG enough, and that's why they ended up losing that series. Like,
well,
it was
you know how I think about Damwon. Like, they were really good, but the problem here is their bot lane just got exposed. Like, I know why they had that specific bot lane.
They didn't lose from bot lane, though. They lost from top lane and jungle being gapped. And that is what lost them. They can't play any other... Like, in my opinion, I think their bot lane was perfect for the team comp at which they tried to play. I mean, there are only like 4 or 5 ADCs in the meta, and he could play three of them. So it's not really like you can do anything.
He got pincered into playing them because
he can only
when they tried to play through him, he couldn't do it.
They never tried to because that doesn't make sense.
They had games they tried playing Draven and Misfortune, and they tried.
Draven generates a lot of his own gold. Like we saw Draven, his Draven game worked out. He got a ton of gold, and he got.
But when they gave him those resources, they lost that game because that's the one where Gumayushi was playing Jhin, and they played the Zillion Jhin comp.
RNG versus T1. I actually think T1 might have been better than Damwon this season, but Damwon very much adapted mid-series against them, and I think that's why they were able to win.
Sean was very mad that RNG just shit the bed against EDG. I had RNG winning that series too, because RNG beat them all year. They were clearly a better team, but you know, EDG that's their good thing. They've always had really good preparation for teams. That's always been a big.
I actually don't think they really changed their playstyle, though. I mean, the only
They never
thing you
changed their
can
playstyle. They just have
they
really
don't
good prep against certain teams.
like what did they do? They picked Zillion, which SKT showed them.
Well, against when they faced FPX earlier this year for the LPL 2021 Summer Split Final, I remember they specifically had a comp dedicated 2 games in a row to stop doing BNTN. I forgot which composition it was. But then when at that point, if you were doing that, you're already 2-0 up in the series. FPX won a game, and they had the 10,000 goal lead. Because to be fair,
I want to say, what
FPX
did
they
didn't.
Games too.
The only thing you can make an argument that they changed against EDG, against Damwon, was they picked Zillion, which SKT did. They didn't prep that. They stole it from SKT from the previous series, so they didn't prep that. That's something that Damwon should have been aware of.
Yeah,
they saw something work out, and that won them a game. And then they essentially had a very good, smart mindset for JJ, which, again, he rotated around the map, was able to be on the opposite side of the map of Canyon every single time.
I don't think that was him. I think that was actually whoever they have coaching. I think they prepped that for him.
Well, obviously,
this guy's been very
jungle
pathing
all year. Jungle pathing is prepped. I'm not arguing that. But the things he did during team fights and stuff like that is not prepped. You can't prep that.
That you can't prep. But I think the pathing that he was able to do is like he's really not that good though. He's probably about the same level as like Santorin for LPL standards.
But
honestly,
I mean, this specific series, he was the best jungler in the world. So you can't really say anything besides the fact that he played well. And you don't attribute what's it called to just jungle pathing. He didn't play well because of jungle pathing. It's just what kind of snowballed the game in their favor. That was one concept of the game that they could have planned. The rest of it was over performances by players that don't usually play as well as they did. I mean, except for obviously Viper.
You don't predict Showmaker to play that bad. Like he played. I'm not saying he played like egregious, like icon levels of bad on LNG, but like you would think he would just pretty much take over the series though, because like with FPX, their mid jungle synergy is what makes them really good. What makes Damwon really good is their mid jungle synergy. And it just looked like Canyon and Showmaker just gave up when they couldn't get anything going against them. Because Scout played really well when you gave him Zoe. Like Scout definitely could match. And that's the thing. Damwon's thing is that they have like one of the best mid laners in the world. So they automatically assume going in, this guy's going to stomp everyone. But what if you can't stomp someone who's almost just as good as you? Like then you hit a wall. And if you can't pass over that wall.
Scout wasn't even a top 3 mid laner at Worlds, so I don't know why.
I mean,
he wasn't. He's not comparative.
Chovy, Showmaker. Would you call Faker in that?
I would probably say that Faker and Scout. I think probably Scout's a little bit better right now, but I think Faker. You can make an argument.
To be fair, it's top 5, but that's to be fair. The Korean mid laners were playing out.
There's
of their
only
mind.
eight mid laners that go into the what's it called, and he's not. He's arguably possibly in the top half.
If you're counting the Korean mid laners like BDD, Chovy, and Showmaker, I mean, like
I'm just saying, like I think
I don't think you can compete with that. You know,
I don't think Scout is nearly as good as Showmaker. So it's not even that he can actually stabilize. It's what I would actually assume is what Caps did to BDD the previous year, which actually just rotate around the map, so you don't actually have to lane against him. It's something that actually just makes him inherently worthless. Is the fact that you don't actually let his superior laning get ahead of you. You actually just don't let him lane against you so he can get that lead. Like, I don't know. I think SKT was something I actually thought at one point they were going to win Worlds. And then I thought Damwon, instead of them underperforming, I think Damwon actually outshined them, because I think Damwon they actually straight up not only
it'd be 5 games. I knew it'd be 5 games, but I didn't think that game 5 would go like that. Like that's just crazy to think about.
They left the Zillion pick that I actually had done really well with them against them in the previous game, and actually picked a comp that made Zillion not actually able to function inside of it. Like there was a lot of games. I mean, again, they left the Zillion, the Jin open inside of the last game of the series, even though they had picked it every single time. It had a 100% win rate in that series, because even though it had been 100% picked, they both picked comps that would have destroyed Jin, so they couldn't play it. Jin didn't work in every single comp, even though it was 100% win rate, and they're not. It shows that win rates and success isn't what actually shows them what they're going to be picking. It's what they have pre-planned notions of what they're going to pick based on the other teams, and I think that is something that I really did respect the Korean teams for that. They really did make the series really fun to watch. But
they made a series of changes, because like when the meta changed in season 8 for them, they completely just like collapsed. Then SKT made top 4 at Worlds that year in 2019, and they played slow as hell. Like I don't even know how they even got that far. They playing that slow. They actually weren't even doing anything and still managed to get that far. And then during 2020, you have Damwon, and they were the outlier. They played really well. And then you have this year, all the Korean teams top their group, except for the one with RNG, except that one. 3 out of the 4 Korean teams went top their group, all playing incredibly fast. They adapted to a play style that wasn't even for them. And now they're like the best at it.
The big thing about it is the fact that the previous season 8 season, I loved IG. They were very fun, but that season specifically balance wise was actual garbage. I mean, there was no ability to play other specific play styles. It was just hyperactive aggression, and that's what snowballed into wins because gold leads mean more than anything else in the actual game because there's so much available gold to be picked up around the map that just regular ganks and Rift Heralds amount to much more than dragons and stuff like that because you can get enough gold to where you can actually make it to where they can't contest you at any single point in the game. That's why you saw a lot of people didn't even look at dragons at the beginning of the game. The teams that actually had the highest dragon proximity at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of didn't actually perform very well. It was
so you're saying basically even the teams that got the most objectives, they weren't even really in an advantageous position.
It's not objectives. The teams that did the Rift Heralds did substantially better than the teams that did Dragons because again,
this is the guy you think is good. He getting caught out like that. Why is he even there? Like that's just horrible positioning. Oh my god, dude.
What happened?
I forgot why this game he was right there in the position. He just grieved an entire kill over. Oh, I forgot Maokai support came back in this series too. I remember
Maokai support is good. I mean, I think a lot of people. I thought Amuma's support was going to pop off at Worlds because of these. I thought he was in good shape, but it just didn't end up happening. It got played a few times inside of play-ins, and then just not from there. I was actually really surprised about that. But again, a lot of the teams actually didn't. The Korean teams essentially sped up the way they played the game, and that's again comes down to just a better professional coaching staff than the rest of the regions. No one else has this many, as much of a impact on the game as the rest of the regions don't have as much of an impact to the game through their coaching staff as Korea does. It just means a lot more there, and we can see them adapting year by year. They gradually sped up until this year they were the fastest team in the world. I mean, I actually thought Damwon was going to do a lot worse because they were so slow paced, but it really didn't matter. They were still able to stabilize a lot of the games by just being able to pick comps that were able to kind of stifle aggression and then kind of catch up from there. And they were the best team fighting team in the world by the end of it.
But there were some games like this one. I remember this one. They completely crushed them in a couple of games. Like it wasn't even close. Like I remember T1 specifically drafting reactionary compositions. They specifically did it because they knew if they could stabilize their aggression, they could win. So I'll give you as an example here, right? So like I think I remember like they would take Jace as an opposition to take out Khan. I mean, obviously Jace is gonna defeat Gragas in a 1v1 anyway. Okay, why would Faker opt into choosing Ryze against LeBlanc?
They didn't. He blind picked it. I'm pretty sure he picked first.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
So
to do that.
The reason that actually, again, for the most part, picking Ryze into LeBlanc is really bad because, again, all she has to do to be able to get a jungle gank off is W forward and get the chains off, and you can't flash out of range of it.
Even if you snare her, she's going to snap back, and it's not going to really be effective.
I mean, anyway. No, she doesn't need to snap back. She only W's in when she needs to hit you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
So
yeah.
The way that Ryze's W works is that if you just W her, all it does is slow her at the beginning. You have to E and then W. So with that amount of time, you can't trade with her fully because all she has to do is QW, and she can actually bounce back before you can get the snare off. You will get snared, but you'll be able to get behind the minions before it can Q you after that. And then
also remember, what is your engage? Just Jarvan going in? Like, what is that?
Jarvan is a good engage.
I mean, that's all their engage.
They had Jarvan engage, and then Lulu being ulting on top of him, so she was able to get a secondary knock.
That's not so bad. That's so bad.
Your comp wasn't meant to hard engage. I don't know what you want.
No, it's a reactionary composition.
This is not reactionary. This is supposed to be.
The only proactive champ they have is Jace. That's all they have.
It's supposed to be a comp that actually centralizes around the global comp with Ryze.
Yeah.
Get early ganks off with Ryze and J4, snowballs into a lane that's more so pick, and if you try and jump on somebody, it's like a kite poke comp instead of actually poking. Though you have like a kite.
for Damwon, you have Engage with Gragas, you have All In with Kiana, you have pick off potential with LeBlanc. Jin could also do what you just said, poke, and you have Rakan who's just going to. Like, Damwon have way more options.
They don't have more options. The actual big problem with this comp is that the comp, and the reason why they picked LeBlanc, even though SKT expected it, is because of the fact that SKT's comp specifically it revolved around Ryze ulting around the map and getting lane leads for the rest of the map. So they constantly ganked him and put him behind, so he didn't actually have that effect. And then again, this comp by SKT is supposed to get an early game lead from Ryze, and they're able to snowball that off of they don't actually let you engage. You see the hard engage, this is actually a counteractive map. For the most part, if you ignore the mid lane, it's a counteractive comp against Damwon's, because theirs is a hard engage, where so you can't really get on top of SKT's comp. And if they engage with like on with J4 on specific on specific picks, you're able to get picks off. You're able to kind of continually win team fights off that. But you don't let them engage with Lulu, Ryze, J4, all those team like players. You have the movement speed, the peel back ability. Just all of these things allow you to keep Damwon's comp away from you while you continually snowball around the map, and don't let them get a 5v5 full team team fight off against you. Like, SKT had a good mindset against the game, but they didn't think about how easily about Damwon being able to see through their comp and what would actually
because in this game, I remember this is a comp you would associate SKT with, putting Kana on a playmaking top laner he can have an impact with for Kennen. I like that. Owner being able to be on Zinzal's fine. They kept Faker on Ryze, like whatever. He's not gonna be able to beat Showmaker. It's okay. Yeah, Gumayusi took Jin from Ghost because he knew if he took Jin from Ghost, he wasn't going to have an impact in the game, and they pulled out Zilean. Like,
they didn't win because of the Jin. They won because of the Zilean. The Zilean 100% shut down everything that Damwon was going to do.
You think that Zilean could have worked out with Misfortune if they took it?
Literally could have worked out with anything. They could have let them have Jin, and they still would have worked. The reason that you don't let them, like a lot of people don't like Jin, is because of the fact that it could actually shut down a lot of people. Because again, if you get caught on top of with the Misfortune on the enemy team, if you ult the person she's ulting, that's a used ult. That ult is supposed to kill at least one person or chunk them down a ton. But with Misfortune, with Zilean specifically, it makes it to where the person you're ulting, well, obviously that, but it makes it to where the person you're ulting comes back at like a pretty reasonable amount of HP, and it kind of negates the entirety of a very long cooldown on the side of an ult. I mean, Misfortune's ult is a very long cooldown, and again, Zilean's ult is, by the end of the game, is literally like less than a minute. Like,
also, it didn't help that Gumayusi and Kiria were running at them like they were on fucking crack. So the Jin got fed. He just ran at you and just basically one-shot people. He just tapped them all with an auto. He was like chunking them all to death.
Look, I love what all of them tried to do. I saw what SKT was trying to do, but again, they ignored the weakness of mid lane and its ability to be ganked by LeBlanc. And again, they wouldn't have ganked Ryze if it had been any other comp. If it had been a team fighting comp that had been like a instead of a Jace top, it was more so a tank engage top, and not a Lucian ADC. If they had not picked those two pieces, they wouldn't have ganked mid as much. But because it was an obvious comp that was revolving around peel back, kiting into not letting them team fight while you rotate around the map with globals, they consistently ganked the only piece that kind of kept it all together. If they had let Ryze just do his thing, they would have snowballed so hard.
Even this composition they have, is this not just basically drafting reactionary for the late game? Like, they almost knew they wouldn't have beaten Damwon in a straight up just early game skirmish with them. That's why you take Azir, and that's why you would take Aphelios. Is that not why you would take those two champions? They knew they couldn't just straight up fight 5v5 them in the early game because they knew their jungler was obviously worse than Canyon. I don't know. This is guys.
I mean, what it came down to is the fact that Talon actually just straight up snowballed the game a little too hard for them to be able to do anything. I mean, Talon was in bushes that they walked into, and it stopped them from getting Barons and stuff like that. It was just incredible play by him, and something we didn't get to see him do inside of the next series. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of strengths when it comes down to SKT. I think both of them had a really good. He was at his friend's birthday.
Oh, you know Warren. You try to help him with his headset. Remember?
I do remember him. Yes.
What's up, Warren? How you doing, man? Oh no, man. I hope you had a good time. I hope you had a good time, man. Yeah. What about this game? Yeah, it was the game. It was a moment right here where they like they basically outmind gamed
I
themselves.
told you
They thought,
that was the Talon catching somebody
yeah,
out so they
yeah, I
couldn't do Baron.
remember
Remember?
that.
I was just talking about that.
But to be fair, in this game, they lost every objective though. It wasn't like they were massively ahead in this game either, though. It was just that they mind gamed themselves into thinking that Damwon one was there when they weren't there, and they didn't go for it, and they hesitated, and by the time they would have did it, it's too late, and the Damwon just aces you.
I mean,
You know?
they could have. They were checking to see whether or not Talon was close. They had to get the words down, but again, the wrong person went and checked, and that stopped their ability to be able to do Baron from there on.
Because remember,
Like,
Damwon play the map, don't they? Yeah, because one of them goes and gets Dragon before they even do this. Actually,
I respect what Damwon did this series. Again, T1 made a lot of bad mistakes just mentally, but again, this was just there was a lot of good mindsets when it was a lot of good pieces of them picking up comps that actually made sense. It was constantly them trying to outmind game the other team. A lot of these comps made sense in theory, but again, there were specific pieces that could have been counteracted to make them not actually be able to work. I don't know. I have no actual problems with anybody in terms of just what they picked for the comps. It was
like if
just
someone said one should have won the series, I'm not. You know, you're not
it's
ever like mad. It's just
it's
like
not
it's one of
wrong.
those stare takes.
No, it's not wrong. I mean, SKT made a lot of mistakes that ended up with them throwing the series away. I mean, but again, I think it was a well-fought series on both sides, so I do actually think it was really fun to watch at the very least. I really enjoyed this one a little more than the
To be fair, the series was
finals.
fun. This was
It was fun to
fun.
watch.
Yeah. Like, this wasn't as good quality as T1 versus Damwon, but this was a fun series to watch, actually. It was
Okay.
cool seeing Scout go toe-to-toe with Showmaker. Like, when he was on, if he's on Zoe, he looks like a completely different player, though. And that's the thing. Like, a lot
Zoe's
of the
not fun to watch.
but like a lot of the LCS players like just refuse to play Zoe for some reason. But she was she was actually, if you played her well, she was shown to be a pretty broken champion during the Worlds patch, actually. I could be wrong, but you know, I don't really patches too much as I used to back in my prime. You know,
Just because you don't even know how to read, man. What are you even talking about? I've seen you. I've seen you trying to read chat half the time.
What do you mean? Warren says I can join if you want. That's up to my friend, honestly.
Yeah, he can join. I don't care.
Okay. Because he's white. He controls me. That's what you guys used to do. Just kidding. Holy shit.
So
But-
is he the one that
No, he's the person you helped with the headset, the New York guy.
it's the New York guy? Okay.
Yeah. Let me do it right now because I actually wanted to give you guys a break tonight because you guys have been helping me out so much with shows. I wanted to give you guys a break actually. Because he said,
out with shows.
"Oh, Warren and Sean, I wanted to give them a break tonight. You know, want to just kind of make it like, oh yeah, let's have someone else bring on and just counteract all my points. Because guys, every time we argue about League, sometimes he won't have a point for me, and he'll be like, well, you know what? This team won anyway. I'm like, what? You can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? Oh shit.
I mean, I have no problems with anybody joining. He usually doesn't bring people in because I most of the time ask him not to. But
He's scared of my amazing way to talk to people on the
Nah,
internet.
I mean, I really have nothing else. You can invite whoever you want to.
Guys, you know we're just kidding. We're just fucking around. But okay, so here's my thing. So after Worlds, EDG won. Okay, so now we're at the 2021 off season. So what did you think about the off season? Actually, so let's start with the big ones. Let's start with Bjergsen joining Team Liquid. Let's start with that.
Bjergsen joining Team Liquid was obviously. I mean, I think that it's really weird after Jensen had such a good Worlds performance for them to replace him. But again, I think that Bjergsen is still he was a really good player besides his previous last season at Worlds. I think for the most part, every single season, he was one of the best mid laners inside of NA. So I think it's not a big deal. I don't know. I think TSM had a very good. I mean, not TSM. We're talking about Team Liquid. I think Team Liquid has a really good shot at doing well at Worlds this season because they picked up Hansama, who's a really good upgrade. I think they picked up. Is this the one that doesn't like Hansama?
No, we need to stop. We need to stop until the only team that has been successful is Cloud9. Team Liquid had 2 chances to get out of groups. Now,
Warren, you sound kind of low. You turn your mic up?
I can hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're better. Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Okay. So I think you're right. Is that your real name? Or is that
No.
I was like, okay. Okay. I'll just call you.
Just call me whatever you want.
Guy in the corner.
Guy in the corner.
Okay. So me and MSK had this discussion, and I'm not going to go on a soliloquy. We get excited for these teams, right? Because we get this nice, like we thought about the Cloud9, like, oh man, we got a really good team, and then we always get disappointed. Like, I feel like, okay, we got Bippo, we got Bergson, we have a really good team, but then we go 3-3. So like, I don't want to put my hopes up because we never seem to do good.
I agree with that.
With the super team. Now, about the Jensen thing, I don't think Bjergsen coming back, great. I understand you got the motivation, the fire, but Jensen has proven he's a better international player, and he's won domestic titles now. I think at this point in his career, Jensen is better than Bjergsen. I've told MSK all this time, and I'm an avid TSM fan. Like
I don't, because I know people think I don't like Bjergsen that much. No, I think Bjergsen is good. I think they're both good. I think it's pretty much a tie. Like there's little differences between the two, but Bjergsen has not played all year. Okay, now Team Liquid replaces that like Jensen with Bjergsen, a guy who's not played all year. He hasn't played competitively all year. Like that doesn't make sense. Like Bjergsen might be an upgrade over Jensen. He might be a better player for the team overall. But looking at what they just did, it just doesn't make sense though. You know, that's just my thing. I'm looking at the context of right now, not more like in the long term of things. You know,
what Jensen was there 2 years though, right?
Since 2019. Yeah,
19. Yeah, he's been 2 years now.
That's crazy. Time flew by that fast. That's crazy to think about, actually. Because so let's talk about what did you think about
Are we done with this team already?
Bwipo
I think there's a massive discrepancy, which I think top lane has been downgraded. I think Bwipo has been good in a lot of situations that if he's needed to be, but I think he's not nearly as good as Alfari is. But maybe the fact that they're not kind of pushed into 1-3-1 comps because Alfari is kind of just more so like a aggressive top laner. Maybe that's better for them in the long run. But I don't think Bwipo is the point at which you want to go for. This guy's played jungle for an entire year now.
I don't think his playstyle matches up with Bjergsen's. Like I told people, like I think the TL roster is the best team, but that's a lot of issues you have going there. Bwipo and Bjergsen's playstyle do not match up at all. Santorin, this was proven this year when I said it last year, and I was proven right, and I'm gonna say it this year again. This team only does well depending on how well Santorin plays, and Santorin is just not that good. You know, he's just really not that good. They have to get a better jungler for this kind of team to work, but you kind of can't because there's already so many resources around the map that really kind of makes it harder. Like you need a player like him to just like facilitate the lanes. Like what do you get for a team like this? Do you get a hard carry jungler or you get a facilitating jungler? I don't know.
I see the problem I have with Team Liquid is that I agree. I don't want to call you corner guy.
Like, corner guy. You good.
Like, my problem with Team Liquid is I feel like they're putting like Bwipo is like a caps of top lane. He's gonna play anything. He's gonna be innovative. He causes a lot of like distraction. And Bjergsen is pretty stable, and he's really good. My problem is Santorin. I would have honestly liked to see they got I thought Team Liquid, if they got Closer, if they had tried to make a move for Closer, that would have been great. Like I think Closer is way better than Santorin.
I think Svenskeren could work on a team like Team Liquid actually. But he played really bad this year too. So I don't think
isn't Closer import though still?
Yeah, he's an import.
Unfortunately, that's true. I really think they should have tried to get Kemby. I think he would have worked well in their system and grow. Do even better than what Santorin is at. Like I don't understand why they didn't do that.
Yeah.
All right. What happened?
I didn't hear what he said right there. Sorry. I tried to. Let me turn my volume.
Oh no, that was me. That was me. I thought I thought I saw something. I was like, what the hell? Okay, so one of the biggest talking points now is LS joins Cloud9. So anybody knows LS knows that LS has been very, very open and very critical of the coaching staffs in LCS or the players' development overall, right? So he's finally going to actually have a chance to prove what he's been saying on stream and actually put it into a team. He's only ever coached what, like BBQ Alvarez that one time?
No, he's
right?
coached like 3 teams. Honestly, I
Well,
believe
they
he coached.
were like challenger teams, right?
No, he coached Gravity that one year. Remember when they had a really
He
bad
did coach
team?
Gravity. Yeah,
Coached
you're
Gravity that
right.
one year where they had a really bad team and they got first place in that split. He coached a EU Masters team that had been last for the entire year. He got on that team and got them the third. I mean, like he's had success. I mean, I think that there are a lot of things to be said, and his track record shows that he at least he's competent. But whether or not I agree with a lot of his stances, I definitely don't. I mean, I think that his stances on specifically like things like Renekton being completely worthless is stupid. I mean, I think that he thinks that there's so much aggression in the early game and there's so much gold to be had that the early game champions can be kind of used. Like instead of using those champions for the early game that fall off in like the mid to late game, you can just use a mid game character that kind of has use in the late game. But the reality is there is enough gold that you can generate in the early game to make early games champions skip into the late game where other champions are still in like the mid to early game.
I heard him say that. So basically, it's a thing like in Yu-Gi-Oh. It's a concept like this. It's the concept of win more, right? So there's these cards in Yu-Gi-Oh where like you could play them, but it doesn't really matter if your deck is that good. You'll get the situation of a win more card. Like you could not really use this and still have the same results. I think what he means by having Renekton is like, since there's already enough early game champions that do what Renekton does just better, there's no real point in actually picking the champion itself.
I mean, his reason for it is the fact that he thinks early game champions that don't have a good late game are worthless because you need champions that scale, and you don't. And it's just a wrong thought process, and that's why Renekton is one of the most prevalent champions inside of League right now. Because that mindset that he has is not the correct one. But at the same time, he makes a lot of good points. His points about specific items not being gold efficient, like the Morellonomicon from a long time ago. He's right about that. I mean, he was right about a lot of things. But I think he also is wrong about a lot of things. We're gonna see whether or not he's actually. This is the first big time he's been on a big team, so we'll see.
Okay, so they got LS because they have Korean players. LS can speak Korean.
Yeah.
Like let's keep it a buck, right? Like K-Dot would say.
There's a reason why they got Summit, Berserker.
I mean, he's probably the reason they got him, to be fair. He probably asked for him.
Yeah.
Now my problem with LS is he hasn't proven anything. And what do I mean? Has he won a title in any region? Nope. Has he been to an international event as a coach? Nope. What has he done? Yap. Okay, great. Granted, his yapping is really good. Like he has some good freezing, whatever, blah blah blah. But my thing is, I'm not going to judge him. I will say this: if he doesn't do good, I want to know what his excuse is. That's a fair assessment because it's like Fudge is a good player. Berserker's good. Summit. They said his stats were comparable to Khan's and LCK, which is really
good. He's very good.
Like the fact that Fudge would roll swap to another lane, and he even said himself Summit's better. Because that's the thing is LS. Because that's the thing with the team is that struck to me because I did this Cloud9 video that's gonna come out tomorrow actually, where so LS would point them to Korean players, right? Now, he points them to Summit, so he obviously thinks Summit's better than Fudge at playing top lane. And then that indirectly makes Fudge go mid lane. Now, if Summit's as good as they're making him out to be, and I think he's actually pretty good. Fudge can't go back top lane because why would you put Fudge back top lane if you have the better player? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, what they could do is bring in Niski or Jensen if it goes wrong, and put Fudge back because he has more potential still to grow.
And that's the thing is like LS pointed at a better player than Fudge at top lane. They got the better player. Now, if it works out as well as they're thinking it's going to work out, Fudge can't go back to top lane. I mean, he just have to lead. I mean, it's gonna be the same thing that Perks had on G2. He wanted to play mid lane again after playing ADC. I think given how this year could go for Cloud9, and I love the team, but if Fudge doesn't do well mid lane, he's gonna attempt to go back to top lane, and if Summit's already better than him, there's no reason to get rid of him. He's just got to go to another team. That's just the situation you're going to be in.
Well, let's be honest. The mid lane pool is pretty whack.
You have Bjergsen, Abadagi, and PoE are your biggest competition. That's it.
Right.
I'm sure Golden Glue is somewhere around there. You can grab
him. We have Palafox now.
Oh, Golden Goose, I think he's a assistant
coaching.
coach or positional coach, something like that.
I mean, we have what's that guy's name? A Blaze Olive. Who's not that bad, actually.
They've only had a year. I mean, and they're also on badly coached teams, so maybe they have a chance to get better. I mean, I think one thing I actually like about Summit is his ability to play aggressive champions. I mean, he's probably going to be by far and away the best Jace inside of NA, and that's something we've lacked for ever. I mean, we've never had good Jaces inside of NA. So there's a possibility that they're going to be good, but I don't know why they stuck with Fudge unless he's shown something that they like. I mean, maybe they just don't have another option, but I don't know.
Maybe they truly think he can play mid lane. I mean, I'm not saying he can't, but everyone is saying like, oh, he's just going to be good at it. We don't know that. We have no indication if he's going to be good at mid lane or the best at it. No, we don't know until we see him play.
Like when you have champions like, say, a Kali, Rise, they can kind of share between Aurelia. He has a lot of mechanical skill, and we saw Lee Sin mid, and we saw Lee Sin top, and we saw his Lee Sin at MSI.
His Lee Sin top was pretty good.
So his mechanical ceiling is high. That's why I think his transition there, and I think he'll have more time to. I think he can affect the map better.
Yeah, I agree.
So I actually think this is a good for him, and if he performs well and they don't keep him, he can. I'm sure a team will still pick him up for top lane if he wants to go back, or vice versa. So I don't know. I feel like this isn't LCS anymore. It's basically the Olympics because. The teams aren't even NA, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference to me, to be honest. But
I don't really care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me who's here.
Because to be fair, like the top teams in the region, like they have the most views even on their content. Like people even know this too. Like the best teams like barely have NA players anyway, though. Like it's mostly just based around winning. I think people for their favorite organization they subsidize not being an NA team if the team wins. You know. Because, like, I don't personally care if you're from here. Like, what is you being born here? That does not dictate how well you play League of Legends. And I've told you this before. The imports are just always better. The reason why they failed, it wasn't because they're skill. It's because the orgs they went to were just not able to show off the huge, fullest capabilities of them. There's a reason why there's barely any, like, NA mids ever. Because they're just not that good. Can people admit, like, they're just not that good.
Who doesn't admit that? I mean, a lot of people admit that the NA player base just isn't as talented as the rest of them, but that comes down to lower amounts of players. I mean, a large majority of the players aren't even playing ranked inside of NA, which is not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you good. Keep going.
I was gonna say, NA has good ADCs.
Yeah, I agree.
And support's fine. It's top and mid that's like kind of like mediocre.
Pretty key positions right there.
they're mediocre, like, which is really weird because those are like the key positions. So like look at Danny, look at Tactical. These are NA produced talent.
Yeah, like I'm not saying they don't. We don't have like diamonds in the rough. It's just like on average the import players are better because
for the major role
for the major roles. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe if we import more players like Ica, then, they'll get the NA players' confidence up.
Because, like, people got to factor in, what was the best NA mid laner? Like, native. I get Pobelter for a little
probably.
bit there. Yeah, he won consistent titles. He did.
I think at their peak, I still feel like, what was his name from Dignitas that one year? Oh. The one that was in the league this year. He was, at one point in time, I thought he was... No.
You sweet.
No, I'm not talking about him.
Scar.
Whatever. I can't remember his name anymore, but he actually had a lot of talent. He just again, a lot of them don't have the ability to keep up the mechanical prowess that a lot of the other regions do. I think they're really good at the start of their what's it called with the hype, but I think the lack of training a lot of these teams actually get in terms of just how to play around the map is something that makes them fall apart because. It's not just laning that makes them not able to compete with them, which is the big problem. It's their the ability to affect the map that the mid laners inside of NA don't know how to do.
Yeah, like here, I'll give you guys an example. So like the way that the way that Summit would play Jace is not the way you would probably see a player like who's a bad top laner? Who's the guy on Dignitas? The top laner they have. Oh my god, his name.
Fake God, yeah.
Fake God. Yeah. So if you see Jace. if Fate God in Summit's hands, and you see Summit play Jace, and you see Fate God play Jace, you can see there's a significant quality difference in play. It's very, very noticeable. Like,
yeah,
you could
Fate God's clearly better.
you could be a brain dead idiot and see that there's a difference in quality gameplay. Like Double Lip said a while ago, which I just disagreed with. He was like, yeah, sometimes you just got to take the nameplates off. No. You will get destroyed doing that. There's a reason why people were scared of Rookie playing Zoe as compared to someone like I don't know, like Bjergsen playing Zoe. It's just not the same thing. He's just like Rookie's just a better player, you know? And it's not even just the champion itself, it's just how they lane, how you CS, how you move around the map, how you interact with your team, how you actually itemize. There's just I don't know. It's just how I personally see it. Like, I think there's a reason why, like, the top teams don't pick up many NA players, though. Like, you have anomalies. You have, like, Blabber. You have, like, Danny. Players like that usually come around.
But to be fair, right? Excuse me.
No, you're fine, dude.
Broken Blade is not NA. He's from TCL. But he performed pretty good. Like, Niski, Broken Blade, Treats, they all came from NA, but played pretty good in the LEC. So it's not I don't really think it's an NA thing. Because they could have got memed on. They could have played bad, but they didn't. All three of those players played pretty good.
So what do you think contributed to that? What do you think contributed to them actually, like, showing their full potential?
Just how they're managed. How they're put in the team.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, like, again, we've seen EU is probably the single most adaptable out of every single region. At the beginning of the year, they really have a good mindset, and a lot of the other regions will steal kind of pieces of what they actually pick. Like we saw Victor in Season 5 originated, like that pick specifically originated inside of EU, and the other regions started using it. A lot of things originate inside of EU because their coaching staff is able, they essentially look for these new metas and try and shape them from that. And even inside of Worlds, they're a lot worse mechanically than the rest of the regions, but they can actually, or just the two regions, but they can compete on some level because their coaching staffs essentially don't try to play the game the same way the other regions do. They try to play it their own way. NA specifically tries to copy the other regions, but they only do it by picks. They don't teach the players how to play the game. And they eventually fall apart when it comes to playing somebody who just plays the way you do, but plays better. Like, just they do it better. Like, NA doesn't teach the players how to actually play the game, and that's why they don't actually mold into decent players. Like, a lot of these players can translate mechanically into the other regions, and that's why they're able to succeed. Because even if they are bad here, with a proper coaching staff, a lot of them could be like decent players.
Well, you have Cody Sun and Cody Sun going to the ERLs. Actually, we'll see how that'll work out for him. Because I don't think he's a bad player at all.
Players did that though, like EU teams taking chances on NA players, because EU fans act like there's zero talent in NA, but they could honestly like make players like Blabber, like they have the mechanical talent easily for like LEC, and then they could just make them, just like put them in order, their IQ in game and shit, make sure he doesn't, die at the crab.
I think if TSM had put Cody Sun in, they go to Worlds. I really think so. Like, Cody Sun's better than Lost. Like,
that's not arguable, yeah. I mean, I think Lost had a lot of problems. I think there was a specific set of weeks that I think he played well, and then it was only for like 3 weeks, and then I think he was just mediocre from then on. You could argue that it was actually a problem with the team not actually giving him resources or attention, but I think it's just because Lost wasn't as good as the rest of the players somehow. Even in NA, that was really kind of sad to say. Like, yeah. I don't know. I like Lost. I think he might have had the potential, but he never actually got fully onto a coaching staff that was able to.
It's weird because like you'll have like decent players come on TSM and then they leave TSM and they play absolutely out of their mind. I don't know if it's just a TSM thing.
Yeah, there were like 5 ADCs from all 3 of their like teams in their system that left in like one off season, and all 5 of them were better than the ADC they ended up starting with in the end.
Yeah. I mean, Johnson was on there.
Tactical, Sven, like Cobby, and who was the other guy? I forgot him, but yeah, and then they went with washed up garbage Double Lift, who was carried to a title in Worlds.
All right. So we had the other thing, which was, we didn't talk about this last episode. I wanted to bring this up. Rekkles joining Karmine Corp. So guys, I've seen Rekkles play in the LEC for years, like just literal years. MVPs, Worlds Finals, Worlds Quarterfinals, Semifinals, titles, like you name it. He's pretty much just done it all, actually, except just for in Worlds, actually. And now after all these years, he's not going to be on an LEC team. Like, that's crazy to think of a world where the LEC is not having Rekkles, nor the fact that any team in EU took the chance on this guy. I don't even think it was because of money. These guys have money. They just
it's money, bro.
You think
It is
money?
definitely money. They bought him for like $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Casual explained it. So basically, I'm gonna paraphrase. It's like,
okay,
why take Rekkles, who has like a buyout of like let's just say 1.1 million.
Good God.
When you can go to the ERL and sign a player for 190K.
No, and he's right. He's definitely right. Like, and the thing, I didn't think highly of Rekkles like the way some other people did actually this year. I didn't really think he should have been MVP in spring. I think that could have went to literally, Treats, I thought was the MVP. That's who I chose. I think he was the MVP. I think in summer, people were like, he's the MVP. No, like, I don't think he deserved the MVP that he got in spring. I think that was just a fluke because he was on the best team and they wanted to have that for narrative purposes, actually. But like, to think that there's going to be a world without Rekkles in the LEC is just crazy, you know?
I mean, the reason, if you haven't actually noticed, is that they're actually going to be expanding EU, or at least that has been the rumors. And Carmine wants to be the next team that gets into it, and picking up, getting a fan base. Getting a fan base and getting Rekkles on the team is one of their biggest ways of getting into the region or getting into the LEC.
Yeah,
that's why they're willing to give the money to him. I mean, it's very logical why they did it. I don't know why Rekkles did it besides just money. That's the only reason I could think of.
There's two different ways that I can think of. So he goes to ERLs. Okay, if he wins it, okay, what does that really prove? Because he would have to play literally out of his mind to get back on a team. Like, let's just say, hypothetically, they do have the money to get him. But that would only be dependent on he would have to play literally out of his mind and win the ERLs. But then, even if he wins ERLs, he's not going to be on an LEC team, so he's not going to go to Worlds, though. So this would be like this is technically a waste of time, my personal opinion.
This is a glorified scrim.
Yeah, he's just wasting his time, honestly. Because even if he wins, let's just hypothetically say he wins both ERL splits. Doesn't matter. He doesn't go to Worlds. He would literally have to play out of his mind to be back on an LEC team.
Well, I think he'll be back next year, definitely, either way. But I think this is good for his mindset, honestly. Like, yeah, maybe makes him less toxic or his ego, whatever. But yeah, I'm the time thing. I'm like, because how long does he really have left in pro play? You know, he has worlds like dreams and stuff. Like, he's like 25 or 26, and he's gonna fuck around a year in this league and then go back to LEC next year.
Yeah, I mean, 25 seems to be getting to the point where I think a lot of players start falling off their ability to be able to play, or at least that's what it seems like. I mean, Faker was like 18 when he came into the league. He's 25 now.
I think 26.
Yeah, CoreJJ is still incredible. I think it's obviously might be because he's in support, but I don't know. I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that it's more so time played, in my opinion, that actually starts getting to these players. And I don't know 100%. We haven't really seen what any professional player's limit is, because there hasn't been a scene for long enough to really see what the average, because the primes in other sports is like 28 to 31. But I think it's very possible that we could actually see him getting to the point by the time he comes back into the league in like 2023. I think it might be a little too late for him. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, the oldest the player has been, I believe, is like 30. X-Smithy almost played in LCS since 30.
BRTT is still playing.
BRTT made it to MSI at 30. I think he's like inactive right now. He didn't get on a team. And Afromu's going to turn 30 later this year.
Yeah, Afromu, BRTT. You have Gilius, is going to play on SK Gaming. I mean,
Gilius isn't that old, actually. He was like 20.
20.
No, he was like 24 when he was on like SO4.
I think that's good for SK.
Crazy.
You know me.
Yeah, I don't know why they did those moves. What the fuck were they doing? Money, I guess.
Jezus and his crazy ideas of making worlds, you know?
How old was St. Vicious when he played?
Was he like 18, 16, I think?
No, he looks really old, so I'd assume he was like 30 already, but I don't know. I mean, he could have been younger.
Here was the LEC. So the yellow implies, or I'd say means confirmed, right? So G2 has Broken Blade, Yankos, Caps, Flacked, Targamas, and Dylan Falco. Now, people don't remember who this guy was. He was on Giants Gaming a while ago. I remember. He was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome pickup.
So who's the teams that I have that I want to talk about? Okay, so I want to talk about Fnatic, G2, and Team Vitality only. Just Fnatic, G2, and Vitality. So it's pretty much between these two rosters as like who would be like the best ones. Because like let's be honest, who else is competing with them? You know?
I think Excel can.
Can you pull up the rosters? I don't remember all.
Who is Misfits mid laner again?
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let me refresh the page. Something happened to it. All right, so I want to go over Vitality, Fnatic, and G2 just for the LEC, and then we have the teams to do it for the LCS, right? So let's just go on G2. So this roster could work one of two ways, right? So here, I want to point this out here. The only year, well, technically, okay, now you have 2 years. The first year G2 didn't really win anything was in 2018, and they had Yarnin and Wadid, who were clearly bad, like absolutely terrible. Okay, so they move away from those guys in 2019, and then they just win everything. This could be the exact same situation though, because I don't think Targamas is that bad. I saw him play a little bit back a few years ago.
He's good. Awesome now.
That's pretty good.
He was the best support from the league you could probably get. They got
an upgrade. They got an upgrade over Wonder, which is Broken Blade. The Yankos and Caps, I think, are still be pretty solid, but Caps did not look like Caps this year. He only looked like Caps during the playoffs. And in playoffs, he played great. In the regular season, he looked like crap. Like craps. Yankos turned it on in summer, but he looked bad in spring, you know? Like, is this a roster? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the big things I like about G2 is the fact, again, I really do like top laners that actually have that ability to play aggressively because to be able to be an extremely fast-paced team, you have to have the ability to play one-through-one comps. You can play team fighting comps fast-paced, but for the most part, again, the ability to have that person that goes into the side lane forces the other enemy team, like top laner, to go to the side lane and react to you while you consistently force the other team to fight 4v4 or give up top lane pressure, like by forcing up TPs. It's a very good play style that a lot of teams aren't able to take advantage of because they have weak top laners. We saw that they tried to force Khan onto more aggressive top laners for that specific reason, and it was one of the reasons they ended up doing so poorly inside of like the end of the World's playoffs. I mean, top lane is one of the most important lanes to have the ability to be versatile, and I think Broken Blade is not super versatile, but he has the ability to play more aggressively. And that's going to give the ability, because Wonder right now, if Wonder came back to his form, Wonder's obviously able to play both, which is a very good pickup for them. But again, with how Wonder's playing right now, the ability to have that player is actually able to play aggressively is going to give them a lot faster paced games, and they're not going to fall behind a lot the early game and not have to try and catch up. Because that was G2's actual biggest problem, is that they fell so far behind trying to play reactively that they weren't able to keep the teams from snowballing too far away.
In that last best of 5 they played against Fnatic won every single early game. It was literally just they threw the games away. Fnatic themselves just threw the games away.
I was going to ask, can you just post a link in the prior chat? Because I want to look at it later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure, dude. So my thing with the G2 roster is I think they're just doing this because, okay, it's kind of like the thing that happened with Yarnin and Wadid. If Yarnin and Wadid actually worked out, they get the last laugh. Okay, like we knew these players were good. It's the same situation here. If these guys work out, it's really good. But if it's not, they're gonna get switched out. Like that's what Carlos does. He'll just switch you out if you're bad. Like I don't know if this is for money reasons. I don't know if this is just for like pride. I don't know.
No, it isn't for money reasons. These guys, I don't know much about Flack, but he did have good statistics. He does have good mechanical things, and his team really wasn't the best. Same thing with Target Moss, and Target Moss is actually just the best support you could get out of that league. Like again, there are so many like supports in Europe in those leagues that just aren't getting chances over washed up ones. He is one of them.
Guys, factor this in. There's Promise Q is in the LEC still, and Rekkles isn't. Just factor that in. That's still a thing. Promise Q is still in the league, man. Still kicking. All right. Fnatic. So I think a lot of people like the Fnatic roster. I do too. I think they have a top 3 team only if Wonder comes back to form. I think if Wonder comes back to form, this is going to be either the best team or one of the best teams in the LEC. Humanoid is great. I think Razork is good, but Razork has an issue in the playoffs, though. In that Misfits Gaming versus Rogue playoff series, he visibly did not have an impact in the game most of the time. Like, I think Razork is good, but he struggles in playoff games, actually.
I think Razork is actually really good. I think that was one of the biggest problems I actually had leading up to this roster was whether or not they were going to get top laner. And when they got Wonder, I was again this could if Wonder plays well, I think this is probably the best team in the EU. But that is all hypothetical. I mean, I don't know how good Wonder is. I think Razork is more so like a carry top like jungler, and they're going to have to rely on that specific fact. But again, the meta for like 4 straight years has been carry junglers for the most part. I mean, or maybe not carry junglers, but hyper aggressive early game junglers. So, I mean, we're gonna see whether or not Wonder actually works out. That is really the kill. It's gonna be what kills this roster if it doesn't end up working out because they have a lot of potential on this.
So why I think I don't like super teams because you end up having too many identities.
Cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks. So like when I see the Vitality and G2 roster, it's like they need it's gonna after 6 games, they have to say to themselves, are we playing through caps or are we playing through Broken Blade? Because they can easily have an origin and end up 10th place because they just don't know their identity. That's what I think can happen too with Fnatic because like Humanoid had armpit in the top lane, so like so like I could imagine like you have to rely on his Wukong and these weird picks, and I'm not to be fair, Arma did play pretty decent. Point being is that like I think we're sleeping on the other teams. Like I don't know, I know you guys watch LEC, but I think everybody on the panel can agree that teams like Astralis, teams like BDS, even XL, they're not the easy wins that these teams thought they could get in the spring and the summer. Like we saw so many upsets, and like it's year after year. Like when they put in Marco and Advian, XL almost made playoffs yet again. So I don't think we should sleep on these other teams because I don't think it's as big as we think, the gap.
I think there are some at the very bottom. There's like 2 or 3 teams that I think are actual garbage. I think there's very good teams. Like there's like 6 good teams in the EU, 6-5 that are actually competitive with each other. But then we get teams like what is it called? Teams like BDS. I don't really know how good they're actually going to be. I don't really like what they tried to do. They picked up Crown Shot. They have Limit. I'm like, I don't know who Nuclear Int is, so I can't really speak
Nuclear
to him
Int was the Schalke no Fear's mid laner, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm glad he's getting another chance because he was actually not that bad under the circumstances. He has potential.
Yeah, it was Kyria. It was garbage.
Kyria was just the worst jungler in the league.
Like all around, I think that BDS has like a moderately bad team for the most part. They have a lot of decent players that kind of they got the leftovers. They got Crown Shot, they got Limit, they got Adam, everybody that kind of got kicked off the original team. And I think they could possibly make a good team around that, but I don't see them doing well in the playoffs if they even make it to it. But there are some teams that actually do work with if we look at the previous super team with G2, there are very specific super teams that can work, and it's because they picked identities that actually mesh well together. We have Wonder, who doesn't demand resources. We have Caps, who works well around the map. We have Yankos, who's again generates his own resources and is able to gank the other lanes pretty consistently. He's not a hyper farming jungler. He's more so hyper ganking and tries to make that work for him. The difference between that and the G2 I see now is the fact that the Broken Blade demands too many resources to really be functional with a team that already has Caps. Like, I think that's going to be a big problem for them. And again, it doesn't have to be a problem if whatever Flacked, I heard Flacked wasn't very good, but if Flacked can do moderately decent, they can just play topside and not give as many resources.
That's the thing, is like Yankos can also function like a carry jungler too. That's going to be another problem.
What I'm going to say is the only way this works is if the identity of Flacked is the way that Ghost functions on side of Damwon. It's the only way I see this working because, again, Targamas, I hope he roams around the map more consistently than he would lane. And they try and make things work around the top side of the map and just have a more so consistent DPS threat inside of the bot side of the map instead of trying to carry through them. That's the only way I could see this working because Broken Blade with him, and if Flack demands resources, there's just too many too many mouths to feed in this specific thing. So if he doesn't play a more supportive ADC, I don't see it working out too well. Like,
yeah, and I think Rogue is going to be a 7th place team this year.
So
Really?
here's the Rogue thing is, remember when Team Vitality did well in 2018 and then they swapped out Kikis for Mowgli? Yeah, I think this is the exact same situation.
you can make, like, what's it called? The reason Mowgli wasn't that good is because he was a jungler that was kind of reliant on communicating with his his laners to be able to.
It's gonna be the exact
like,
same thing here with this guy.
The difference is Malorang isn't the same kind of. I mean, Mowgli wasn't that good. Mowgli did decent in like one specific split, and that was good enough for people to pick him up. But I mean, that doesn't make him good to be able to transcend the language barrier that's going to exist with a jungler. It's specifically a role that requires most communication.
Yeah.
Like, I think Malorang might be pretty decent. I think he might work a little better. But I don't know why jungling is the role that they actually pick most of the time. I think mid lane is usually the best one for a Korean, like pretty much either one of the solo laners or the
Larson's
ADC.
not that bad. Like, Larson's actually
No,
pretty
I
good.
agree. I'm saying you don't replace him, but like those are
That
the
man's
3
a
lanes that
bum.
make sense.
Oh my God, Warren, Jesus
No, he
Christ.
doesn't like Larson.
He doesn't like Larson at all.
That man's a bum. Like, get rid of that fool. like I honestly, I'm saying it right now. I think XL is going to be a top 4 team.
You think a team? You think Finn? I mean, Finn looked a lot better
Finn
on
is way
CLB
better
than he
than
looked.
Kryze. Finn is by far better than Kryze.
Yeah, because Kryze, basically, Excel with Kryze is basically a 4v5 instant, because Kryze was so bad.
Well, I mean, they have literally the only other options are Kryze and Arome, so I don't know if there's really anything happening on that end. I think they have Nukeduck, who again, he kind of forces his teams, I think, a similar kinds of concept to what Chovy does to a team, except he's not as good as Chovy, so it's bad. But he forces teams into a specific identity, where they're actually trying to kind of force into an early game aggressive play style. And Finn doesn't play aggressive top laners. He's more supportive than anything. I mean, he can play top laners, but not on a competitive level.
To be fair, because I watched his solo queue. To be fair, I just don't think teams put him on, because when you have Han Sama as your carry, like, I can see why. That's why I think the Finn pickup's good, because one, CLG didn't know how to use Finn. Marcoon and Avian are gonna level up, because they were just like big dogs when they came out, beating G2, and they beat some other teams in the first week. I feel like the teams that made playoffs, besides like Mad, MSF, and Rogue, I just don't see them doing good this year. I just don't see it.
Because the thing with Mad Lions is they lose their best piece. Like, Humanoid was a really key piece for them. Like, he did so much for the team. Now, just imagine taking all that out. He did so much for the team. Now you don't have that. Now you're hoping this guy, he's gonna have a completely different play style.
I don't think they got rid of him. I think he left.
I think he just left because, I'm pretty sure he just left. Like, it wasn't really up to.
It's not like they had a choice. They had to do what they did.
Your contract was up, so we just chose to go to a better org, or maybe I would say better org. I'd say, like, well, you get paid more money essentially.
A more storied org.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to leave your imprint on the league, you got to go to big name teams, unless you're just that good. Like, I don't know.
And that's my thing. So the last roster we'll talk about is Vitality before we go to NA, and then we just kind of wrap up. Vitality's roster to me is interesting. So I think Alfari is better than the top laners Team Vitality had. You have Selfmade, who I think is good, but he's pretty much just like Dardoch. He's literally just what Dardoch is. If he pops off, he looks really, really good. If he pops off, he looks great. But if he starts faltering, the team itself starts faltering in a certain way. Like the same way, I think Amazing pointed this out. Like a modern day Forgiven, like his mentality and how he sees the game with the players around him is going to affect the team. I think Perks will play better under the circumstances of the LEC compared to the LCS, but he did not look good all year anyway. So maybe, but he's an upgrade over Leader. Like Leader was just straight up bad. Leader was straight up garbage. I think that is an upgrade.
Leader had good stats. That's what I don't understand.
Stats schmats. He looked like crap in the game.
Leader was the most hyped person coming out of the master scene, so it really surprised me. I mean, he only played for like a split, man. I mean, it's hard to say that he's not great. I mean, he doesn't have any
I
potential
don't know,
because
his
there's a
actual laning,
possibility.
when
You
watch
just
him
hate
in
on
game,
him.
When he was in laning phase, movements around the map, everything, he just was
had
terrible.
He had the third best stats in the
He played
LEC
all
for
early game
spring.
aggressive champions. Of course, you're gonna look that good. with
I'm
his
just saying,
stats.
I think leader definitely needs to have the chance to develop because Perks is not. I don't think if you want to compete on the very top, if you want to win worlds, which is the end goal of a team that has Alfari self-made, like Labrov. I mean, all these players are one of the best in their region. I think. I didn't name
I
Carzy
think
obviously,
they have
but like
here. I think they have perks for his massive amount of intangibles.
you
that
can
he brings
say
to a
whatever
team.
you want, but teams that have perks cannot compete, specifically in mid lane, cannot compete at the very. They cannot win worlds. He doesn't have the mechanics to be able to compete with these mid laners.
No Western team is winning.
I
worlds
will agree
anytime
with
soon.
that, but he doesn't do enough around the map either. Like he's in too important of a role to be that much of a deficit at this point in his career. I think he was really good at the beginning, but I think those days are probably not here anymore.
Like
And if you
I
want-
don't know. I think they're literally just picking him up because of the intangibles that he brings that everyone knows about. Being a good
What about
leader
his intangibles of bringing them down to not have a
in
competent
0-10
mid laner
Renekton games.
mechanically?
I
I
mean-
like perks, but what's up?
I think Carzy. Personally, I think Kaiser made Carzy look good. Like Carzy's a good
Yeah.
ADC, but I think Kaiser made him look good.
Yeah.
And
That's
we're gonna
true.
see,
Yeah, I agree with
and
you.
we're gonna see that Carzy is not as good as we thought. Like
I
he's
didn't think
He's
Carzy
a
was
better
good.
version. He is a better version of Wild Turtle, and by a slight margin, and it's not even that big. He's
okay.
honestly not that great.
I won't say that. I don't think Carzy is good.
A
but I
lot of the
didn't
times, Mad Lions lost game was because of him. He would get caught out, and he would try. He would.
So,
he would
like,
think,
What you're saying is a little over the top. He's not slightly better than Wild Turtle. He's definitely better than that. But at the same time, that was a stretch. Labrov is still a really good support, so it's not like he is definitely downgraded, but he's still on one of the better supports inside of EU. So there's a very high possibility he still gets carried. I mean, we could see that again in this season.
I think if the Vitality roster works out the way the coaching staff probably thinks, they're going to be a top 3 team. But it depends on, can Perks be an actual legitimate top 4 mid laner? Can Selfmade be their best jungler? It's like, Alfari, can he be the best top laner in the LEC?
Okay,
It's possible.
So since you're wrapping up LEC, if you guys had to say who's winning LEC right now,
games.
Who do you guys have winning LEC?
Ooh,
Just
you
look
never
at this
want to bet
roster.
against Perks. You never want to bet against Perks, though. That's the thing. I never want to bet against Perks.
I always bet against Perks.
Holy
I
shit.
don't like to use past precedents to say whether or not I believe a team is going to play well. I think they're not a bad team, but I think Perks is not at the point in his career where he can play competently enough to be able to compete in mid lane very consistently. I think he's a good player and he has a good mindset and he's a leader, but is that enough to be able to ignore the liabilities that he brings? Like the only time we really saw him pop off was on LeBlanc, and still he almost lost them that game even when he was the one winning it.
He W'd over that wall and W
Like
back to kill
he
himself.
killed himself too many times on a mechanical champion that is probably one of his best mechanical champions. I think
everyone knows. Like I love G2, but if I'm going by I think these would be the top 3 teams. Like even if Vitality play as decent as people think, I think these are like the top 3 teams right here potentially. Or if Caps and Rekkles also might perform with G2 and Fnatic and Vitality, the teams I hear.
G2, Fnatic, Vitality. I mean, I guess there's a possibility that those are the best. I think one of them is going to fail. One of them is going to fail, and then the team that's going to overtake them is going to be one of the teams we don't expect, which is going to be
SK Gaming.
Honestly.
Oh Lord, no.
Maybe not SK Gaming. Maybe Oh my god, that bot lane. I didn't even realize they picked up Jezu, Gadget, and Mystiques. Mystiques was good that one time he played Thresh 6 years ago. And I thought he was going to be like the future of the LEC supports, and then it just never happened because they didn't play him the next year. Like, I think they just picked up a lot of old veteran supports instead of him.
I mean, don't sleep on Gadget.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Gadget was good. I actually like Gadget a lot. I thought Gadget played great on Unicorns of Love. He actually looked like a top ADC, honestly.
Okay, so I'll go around the horn then. MSK, who do you see winning Spring Split then?
Fnatic.
Corner guy.
If I had to pick based on rosters, I'd probably say Fnatic too.
I'm gonna go with G2. Sean.
Honestly, this is hard, but I'll go with. I think Fnatic will finally get over the hump, but I don't see them winning in summer.
You see him just winning the spring. So I have Fnatic. Sean has Fnatic.
Yeah. Honestly, I could honestly see like Fnatic missing Worlds, but winning summer like C9.
This is what I think. I think there could be a world where Vitality actually upset because of perks. But I don't know. Like, it's just all these weird intangibles that you have to kind of think about when perks is on a team. Especially when he's going to have better players to function with. Like, he's going to have a better top laner. He's going to have a better jungler. He's going to have Okay, Carzzy did play better than Zen, so he's going to have a better team overall than he did have on Cloud9. Just depends on how far he takes them. But I think if you look at these teams right now, I think Fnatic definitely have the best team.
Fnatic
Like, this is the best offseason Fnatic's had in a while, where they have these big-name players here. Hayun says, it has to be G2, right? They seem the best on paper, and also Dylan Falco's a really good coach. Yeah, Dylan Falco's here, too.
I don't think they even look the best on paper. I mean, we have literally from
what
I've heard of every single thing about Flact is that he wasn't even nearly the best ADC inside of the ESL. They could have chosen a better ADC, and apparently he has a lot of hope in him. So maybe, again, if he's more of a supportive ADC, I agree that it's a possibility. But again, there's too many mouths to feed on that team, and unless he's not hyper-intensively requiring resources, he's going to be worthless. It's going to be a bad pickup to have Broken Blade on that team.
So with me with the whole Flack pickup, it's they're doing it to basically say, oh yeah, we knew this guy was good. No one took a risk on him. If that doesn't work out, it's going to be there. He would get automatically replaced by either summer split or next year in an off season if he doesn't play well. I know this for 100% fact. If he doesn't play well,
you know this for 100% fact, really.
Well, we know how Carlos replaces players who don't play well. So
okay.
I mean, am I wrong? I don't know. Because he let go of Wonder, Mickey X, Grabs, all the players that were going to be supposed to be like the best team.
Wasn't TSM supposed to get Mickey X because they're now just a
talk
sub?
About TSM in just a moment here. Oh, do I have TSM to talk about tonight? Oh, well, I'm supposed to have TSM there, but it's wrong in the title. It's supposed to be about TSM.
No, because they said he was going to TSM, but now it just says he's a sub. So
we'll talk about these three right here: TSM, Cloud9, and Team Liquid. So I don't know who the hell this is. Creamy? Is that a because they wanted to go for a Chinese mid laner?
Yeah, that's a young Chinese mid laner.
Yeah, he's from OMG. He's pretty good actually. He is.
Good.
Oh, he is. Okay. It could work out. It could work out.
The big thing about it. What's up?
No, go ahead. No, you're fine.
Okay, so I think the big thing about TSM is the fact that they actually picked their specific statement was the fact that they're going to actually pick up a lot of young talent and try and develop instead of have a competitive year. They want to make it to where they actually just get a lot of good players, try to develop them into something and make a team that's going to be built towards competing in the future, replacing the weaker pieces later on in like Cooney and probably Tactical they're going to replace because I don't see those being in the future if they're trying to wait for a few years. I don't know. I mean, I don't think TSM's year is this year. I don't think they look that competitive. I don't think they look like they have a lot of pieces that can make it because I don't know a lot about Senyi and stuff like that. I don't know who he is.
Is he Chinese?
The star means confirmed, so that'd be Takeover, Spica, Huni, Tactical we know, and this guy right there, Yursan.
Yeah, hold on. Is he is he Chinese? So the one guy.
Dude, I have no clue, honestly. I have zero.
No, I know Yursan is Thailand or whatever. He was from PCS, but they also got him at the same time as Sword Up. The other guy, is he like Chinese or? Because I know they wanted to build a majority Chinese team since Spica's Chinese, and they want to invest in the Chinese fans. And Cream is so.
He is from FPX. So he's Chinese.
So yeah, Chinese team. Okay. But yeah, Instinct, very good, very young, so they're gonna grow him, hopefully. So yeah, they did the right thing instead of getting fucking dog shit players like Icon. Which makes me sad though, because I want them to fail, but hey.
Oh god. Alright, so yeah, Warren, go ahead. I mean, this is you know what supports TSM around here. I'm off that.
I mean, I am happy that they actually have Peter Zhang back because I think he was a good coach. Sony, and Spica, they were good together, so I don't have a problem with that. Tactical used to play with Spica. I wasn't expecting Cream. I thought they were getting Mickey X like Sean said. I think TSM, if they play their cards right, they're a good 5th, 6th place team.
And that sucks because a lot of people are predicting that they're going to end up like CLG or some shit. I think they're at least a decent enough org to be around like middle of the playoff team at least. I just can't see a world where they've never ever missed playoffs though. I just can't see a world where that happens. But I mean,
I don't like to use past precedents. Wow, that was hard for some reason. I don't like to use that because again, the past has no implication on the future, and they've replaced not only the coaching staff for the most part, but they've replaced the entire team in a lot of situations. I mean, they all they have left is Spica and Hooney from previous seasons.
I mean, Tactical has put on TSM before.
He played on I'm not with these players. And not with.
He was on Academy.
Not with the actual team. Like he essentially was on. Like a lot of these players are kind of they're going to be gelling together. They're going to be a lot of young players that, again, whether or not they work out inside of the the actual scene is going to be. We're going to see that this year. There's too many hypotheticals for me able to place them too high, or be able to say that they're going to be good. But
I think they'll be at least a 6th place team probably.
Possibly, I will say possibly because What's up?
So I was just gonna say, I think the only reason they kept Peter Zane around is because I believe he's Chinese, so language things. Yeah, like I don't think Peter Zane is actually that good of a coach. I do like the Charlie decision though. If you have not yet seen G-Bay's video on Charlie or whatever you pronounce his name.
Charlie. I remember him. He was the
guy from
PSG talent.
Hong Kong.
I
recommend watching the G-Bay 99's video on him.
All right, so we have the Cloud9 roster. I mean, we talked about this already. I think Summit will be a good top laner, though. I've seen him in the LCK.
Darshan's better.
He's good. Oh, God. Good Lord. Blabber, like, as you guys already know, I don't really think they should have kept Blabber based off his level of gameplay from MSI 2021 all the way to Worlds, but they think they think that he's the best shot they have. So, I mean, I guess...
I think what it comes down to is the fact that Blabber, again, if you actually have to compare him to an international player like directly, I would consider him close to TN inside of 2018. He has a lot of potential. I mean, again, there's a lot of mechanics just kind of boiled in, but there's too many inconsistencies to where you can actually make a team relying on him. Because again, there will be games. What's up?
No, I was gonna say my thing is I think Blabber is literally the MLXG of NA.
Yeah, I mean he's very good on paper, and when he's playing well, he can make your team. He can step them up to the next level. But there are games where he's literally going to flash for Scuttle and still not get it, and he did that like 6 times this year. He's just incredible when it comes to that. I don't know what it is about Scuttle, but they actually nerfed Scuttle this year, the first one, so he doesn't have to rely on that anymore. It doesn't.
So is Fly's top Kumo or?
It is actually. They said that Kumo beat out all the rest of the competition inside of Darshan and all those people, and they said that he earned a spot.
Really? Okay. Well, he's a good, could be a good, weak side one, but okay, so I'm cool with that, and he's
I remember Fly was supposed to get Haunter. Or that was almost a sure thing, but I guess he went out in the tryouts.
He won out in the tryouts against TM Darshan. Pobelter actually was competing for that spot, a few other people.
Wow.
So,
I'm just confused about one thing, right? Sorry, Sean, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say if they were gonna get Haunter instead, then I was saying I think Darshan would have been a better veteran top over him, and I was thinking if they thought that Kumo was better than Darshan and Haunter, then I thought instead of starting Kumo, they would actually just try to get somebody like Tony top instead.
I was just going to say, I think you should add, I know you're only talking about these 3, but I really think 100 T's needs to be in discussion because I think Tenacity is better than Someday. And I just don't, I think Someday is kind of he's
past his prime.
Yeah, he's ran his course. He wasn't really, he really got literally.
What about Gamsu?
I want to see Gamsu return, but that's not happening.
I mean, he's on the team.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, Tenacity honestly is kind of like the shy though. He has like all the tools kind of Someday has right now. It's just he's dying a lot. He needs to work on that.
My thing with the 100 Thieves is, I mean, out the gate, this should still be the best team or one of the best teams because, you know, they didn't change anything. All they did is add a player. I hope they do not let, if Reaper ever leaves, I hope they never let Mithy be the head coach. Please don't do that.
What? You don't like
He's
Mithy?
not a bad coach. He's went to Worlds with two.
He was the reason that. Yeah, when Fnatic did well inside of the playoffs, he was the reason for it because their adaptability. Like, you can't make an argument that Mithy's not a good coach. I think he's incredible.
Well,
but
I think he's better assistant instead of head.
You think so? I mean, I maybe. I thought he looked good inside of Fnatic, but again, that technically he wasn't really doing that
I don't
much,
know if he really understands his players as well as other coaches.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to be fair, a lot of NA's coaches' biggest problems is their inability to connect with the players. So, like, that's not really something we're going to be able to get from any of the coaches over here. That's like a high quality.
I look at it this way. I think I can't say right now if Tenacity's better because the stage games are what matter, right? We'll have to see them. They'll have days where Tenacity play. They'll have days where Someday play. So we'll have to see. I can't say right now if Tenacity be better. Without any stage games, any games that actually matter, I can't say that right now he would automatically be better. But I can say this.
What?
I mean, Kozer, still a pretty good jungler, probably second best next to Blabber if he's on his best day. Abadage, to me, was the MVP, and he played really well for them. FBI and who he was like the best bot lane. But now FBI has to compete with Hansama and Core JJ. That's going to be a pretty good bot lane to compete against, actually.
It is. So, I mean, FBI was, in my opinion, the MVP. I think he was hands and above, like hands and feet and whatever the term is above the rest of this.
Hands down, by far and away.
Yeah. Hands down, yeah. Whatever. I think FBI was quite a bit above the rest of the competition, and that's actually what, in my mind, cemented him as the MVP because Abadage, again, was better than the rest of the competition, but the gap between him and the second place was not nearly as big as the gap between FBI and second place. FBI was like literally this year specifically. The previous year, I think Johnson was probably, I know a lot of people didn't want to or really think so, but I think Johnson was probably better than him 2 years ago, but definitely not this year. I think the gap between FBI and second place became so large that I think the reason they were able to win is because there was such a large gap between the bot lane that they didn't actually have to centralize ganks around there, and they were able to focus most of them around the top side of the map. I mean,
real quick.
You're going to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, keep going. You guys keep talking, okay?
I think, I don't know. I think 100 Thieves is like most undoubtedly the best team inside of NA right now. I don't think there is a competitive second team right now. But I think we're going to have to see whether or not this Cloud9 team works out, and we're going to have to see whether or not Team Liquid's comp works out, because these are the two that could possibly be better. But right now, just by the fact they have cohesion and by the fact that they have just a better roster than most of the rest of the teams, I think 100 Thieves is better. I don't know for a fact.
Yeah, I think they'll like make Worlds at least as like a third team, and I think they'll like in the regular season in spring, I think they'll get first. I don't know if they'll win it though.
Yeah, I mean, there's too much to go into it. There's too many variables.
This is what I'll say. I think it's not surprising if they win another title though, based off like them keeping all their players. They just pretty much got another coach. I mean, like if they win this LCS 2022 spring split, I'm not surprised. If they win lock-in, I'm not surprised actually, because they've had time to gel together. They just won their first title. All of them just won their first title, so they're definitely basically, what's that thing where you win something and you're on like it's a honeymoon phase. They right now just all like each other. They like being around each other. So I think that is going to add into their gameplay. But the Team Liquid roster, I think is going to be the biggest competition, because the Cloud9 roster is such a flippy floppy thing. I don't know how that's going to work out.
Flippy floppy and not, they have by far and away the most potential if it works out. Because Berserk, Isles, all these players that we actually don't know whether or not, Summit is good. Summit, like, you don't even have to make the argument. Summit is a good player. But Berserk and Isles, I've heard a lot of good things about them. But again, for the most part, we haven't seen them on a very competitive stage besides Isles. Berserk, I don't know a lot about him. He's a challenger player.
Yeah, Isles is great, but I don't think his ceiling's as high as other supports. I think he's like the Santorin of supports.
God.
That isn't a bad thing. That's great.
I think Team Liquid will be the 2018 MSF super team that didn't amount to Jack. You remember when they made
that's a hot take.
I think that's what's gonna happen. Because, like, to me, like, don't get me wrong, I like all these players. Purple made me a Fnatic fan. Hanzama was a Misfits. I like them. Bjergsen, but like, this is worse than the G2 roster because who you play? Are you playing through Blippo? Are you playing through Bjergsen? Are you playing through Hanzama? Are you it's like, and then
I think they'll do it to Hanzama. Like, I don't think Bjergsen and them have really been that like resource heavy.
I think one of the big things about it is the fact that I'm not really too sold on the fact that the roster itself doesn't really make sense. And if you stand back and just look at it, it makes as much sense as last year's EG. Like, I did not like EG. They had a lot of good players, but the comp itself put together, the team didn't make any sense to me. This team specifically has a lot of good big name players, but there's so many things going on that actually don't mesh well together that I'm not sure it can work out. They do have a lot of carry potential. They have a lot of good players, but at the same time, I don't know where the mid to late game resources are going to be dedicated, because Hanzama is one of the most resource heavy ADCs in the world. Like, he just demands so much.
I think he can play to himself, honestly. I don't think he needs resources, though.
He needs resources. Hanzama demands resources.
He got a lot of those laning leads on his own.
Yeah, but you don't get when it comes to the mid game. The way resources are divided is whether or not it's dependent on whether or not you have a comp that can rely on both of the mid and top to have TP. Because if they have TP, all of the lane resources can be divided between everybody equally. Except if it's the jungler, the jungle will be left out on its own. Except he can kind of farm his own jungle. But if they don't have TP, the only way you can go to bot lane, or whatever side is the opposite, whatever objective's up, is you can push 1 to 2 waves at the most. Because if you hard shove it, it crashes too fast, and then you have to respond to it quicker. But if you soft shove it by pushing 1 wave, because by not going too far into it and just make it slowly shoved to them, you don't have to respond to it as much. And you force them to have to respond to it while you're forcing a team fight.
Specifically with that point you just mentioned, Hanzama never really needed a lot of that. He just got most of those lanes with Trimby on his own.
I'm explaining
Larson,
he's always gotten gold.
When he has gotten them, he's excelled with his laning lead. But I don't think he's super dependent if he doesn't get them, though.
It's not about laning. Again, the resources aren't given through laning. Everybody gets resources in their lane. That doesn't matter. His ability to get things in lane doesn't matter at all. Besides ganks, that's the only resources you get. In mid to late game, when it comes down to team fighting, is when TPs become more you have to have TP to be able to respond to the side lanes, or you don't have that extra person in that team fight because they can't make it in time. You cannot continually shove a lane, because at that point in time, if you continually shove, you won't be able to make it. Or if I shove like 4 waves and then I rotate over, all they have to do is react to 1 wave, slow shove it back to me, and then they can make it back. Like, if you try and hard shove the entire time, they have the ability, if they have TP, to be able to make it there before you. So you can't really reactively farm the bot lane and still be able to make it. So instead, you have 2 people competing over mid lane resources because you can't stay in bot lane consistently. If they don't have TP. So with that, the reason that I think that it's not going to be a little bit more of a deal is because I don't see Bjergsen always playing a TP reliant mid laner. I think there's going to be situations where he takes like Ghost, Ignite, something. I don't know what there's always summoners that you can take besides TP, which I think is probably the best summoner. Even LeBlanc takes TP for the most part, but like, there are going to be situations where they don't take it, and we're going to have a situation where I see Hanzama being forced to compete against Bjergsen in the mid lane because no one can respond to bot lane and get that farm. They're going to compete against each other, and there's not going to be enough resources to divide equally. So one person's just going to get more. They're going to pick who that is, and I think it's probably going to be Bjergsen.
Like, it just depends on which lane they want to play through. But my thing with the Team Liquid roster, like, I do think it'll be a top 4 team. I don't think there's a world where it won't. My issue here is Bwipo's play style does not mesh well with Bjergsen's at all. They have completely different styles of how they want to play the game. Santorin, the peak of Team Liquid depends on Santorin. It really, that. I said that last year. I was proven right. I'm not saying that has any leeway over this year. What I'm saying is, like, keeping him automatically means that the ceiling of the roster depends on him. Because all these guys are pretty much going to be, let's say, arguably top 4 in their role, right? He's definitely only top 4 because there's just bad junglers here. Like, it's really just because of that most of the time. So it depends on which lane he plays through. Like, Bwipo has been known to pretty much pull his jungler up to top lane consistently. Bjergsen has been known to, Santorin and Bjergsen I played together before. So that's going to be an inbuilt synergy thing they had from TSM. And Santorin played a lot through Bjergsen. CoreJJ, he didn't look that good. He didn't look as dominant as a lot of people I'd like to point out this past year, actually. I think there was a lot of games where he struggled, especially on hook champions. There was point blank Nautilus hooks he was missing against people who were like right in front of him. That's just me personally. Like, I think it can work out. It just depends on which laner. It's something about which laner they want to play to, because like sometimes the meta, you could actually focus on playing through different lanes. The problem here is I don't know what type of identity they're going to have, because they have severe distinct identity playstyles all going like in what's that thing? What's that thing on the highway where you drive and there's like different ways you go through? It's a lot of different pathways. Yeah. It's something like that. There's a lot of pathways this team could take, and it could be all in the bad direction. Bwipo is always going to pull up his jungler. That we know is a thing. No. Bjergsen can play to himself, but is he going to do as well on his own without his jungler's help? I don't know. I haven't seen him play an entire year.
I got a hot take for you.
Yeah,
okay, they're going to put Bwipo back in jungle, move Jensen to top. Boom.
Goodbye. Oh God! And that's my thing is like Hans Sama with CoreJJ, I think will be the best. I mean, should be like arguably the best bot lane, second best bot lane, depending on how FBI and Huhi come into the year. Like I've seen Hans Sama just generate most leads on his own, so like he might not need to pull down Santorin if he can generate those leads he was doing on Rogue. Like if he was playing like he was playing at Worlds, and he won't need his jungler. He's gonna win most of the time by himself with his support. And was CoreJJ a better support than Trimby? I mean,
he was. I mean, I think Trimby is very good.
Yeah.
But when CoreJJ is playing well, he's better. And that's what I actually, again, the big thing about it is that mechanics fall off with everybody. Missing Nautilus hooks and all that stuff happen. But again, there comes a point when just being in the right place, which CoreJJ does a ton, is just more inherently better than somebody who's mechanically better than you. Because he's always in the correct part. He always rotates around the map properly, and that's what actually gets them a lot of their early game leads.
Yeah, that's why Vulcan was so good, even with missing stuff, because he used to be in the right positions every time, getting advantages, and then he kind of stopped doing that in like Summer and Worlds and fell off then. But
yeah, that's why he was so significantly worse at Worlds and Summer Split. I was like,
I still think Vulcan. I know. I still think Vulcan. 2 years ago, I said Vulcan was going to be the best support in the world. I mean, not in the world, in NA. Maybe the world is not right.
The world's a little too big for that.
I meant, maybe I thought he was going to be the best support in NA, and he proved it for one split. And then
Vulcan makes sense on Team Liquid.
I think really what it came down to is the fact that Sven demanded him down to stay in bot a little too much, and that kind of inhibited him as a player. So I think on this new team, he might play a little better.
Yeah, because he went from amazing Roman to kind of shit Roman.
They would die to the oceanic bot lanes. Like, what the fuck?
I do have to say, there's one move I want to talk about, and that's Malice to C9 Academy. If you know about the story with Malice, guys.
He's the one from Korea, right? He went under the Korean team for a little bit.
Yeah, so do you know the story about him, MSK?
No, I don't.
Okay, so basically, he was like a player from Sweden. He was like in Korean solo queue, got high ranks, so then he joined LS's like a Korean academy team. He was coaching BBQ Olivers as the jungler, the first non-Korean player to do so. Him and RJS, I believe, later on, who's in CLG or some other academy team right now. And he was like around 21 or 22 at the time. He got into like an argument with another Korean player there, and LS took his side, which made old Korean fans like call LS and them racist and shit and like harass them, which is why when LS was rumored to be the head coach of T1 last year, he got a bunch of death threats and everything, which was ridiculous. And it really was, if you actually read up on what happened with the Malice situation, he was actually kind of, Ellis had a point there, but that's Korean fans for you, some of them. But anyway, and he hasn't like played professionally outside of that academy Korean team like over 2 years ago, October 2019. is like 24 years old now, about to be 25 in February, like inactive, and now LS is about to be the head coach of C9, and then now he gets signed by C9 Academy. Like, that is... You want to talk about that at all, MSK?
That is a story for another day, because I gotta go to bed, actually. But overall, I mean, okay, yeah, Lou said the thing, like, I have heard about that. That's something I can't predict for, honestly.
Yeah, well, they have an excellent academy support, so...
So that's the thing, is if the academy support is as good as Core JJ, which is probably not going to happen, but if he's somewhat on like Vulcan's level, I think it'll be good. But that's the thing, even when you're talking about Core JJ, he didn't really play that good this year, honestly. So technically, they could have got a player like Vulcan, but I mean, he'd be a downgrade on paper coming in because he did also not play him good himself. So that's kind of how all this goes. I have a video coming out tomorrow. Well, this would be the day you're... Yeah, I have a video coming out.
Yeah, he's kind of on who he's level, the academy support. That's where I put him.
It's not bad, actually. So yeah, I have a video coming out today or tomorrow when you watch this, actually. It's the Cloud9 video, me talking about LS and their roster. Just my own personal opinions on the roster works. I hope it works out for them. Guys, you know me, I'm a fan of G2 and Cloud9. I hope their roster moves work out. I hope they do. Now, I don't know for sure if they will. I just hope they do. You know, like the LS thing could work because he has a lot of really good ideas about what he wants to do. I just want to see him do these things, actually, you know, because everyone wants him to fail. And I never want anyone to just straight up fail. I mean, I want everyone to succeed. Now, I'm obviously going to be the guy succeeding and everything because I'm the big boss challenger player around here.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, anything else you guys want to say before we head out? Any crazy hot takes? Warren said Team Liquid's roster could be like the Misfits one in 2018 when it imploded.
I'm happy for LS. I mean, my hot take is I honestly think even though lock-in doesn't matter, so it's whatever, I honestly think a team we do not expect at all, like TSM, could win it, lock-ins, just because not many other teams will care.
That's true.
I think Cloud9 is going to win the split.
That's not really a hot take, though.
I mean, they've dude, that's crazy. They've won the past 2 spring splits the past 2 years.
Is it not a hot take though, or is it just because based on past because
I don't know.
Like, done well. Like I feel like on paper, like we just don't know how good they're gonna be. But a lot of people like to put them pretty decently high. Because
if there are no communication issues, and I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
I think
isn't Pudge and Blabber learning Korean actually though?
If everything clicks on them, if everything clicks on the roster, and if Fudge is at least a top 4 mid laner, just at least
top 4 is at least is a lot. It's a lot to ask.
You need a good mid laner. I mean, you need.
I'm just saying you're saying at least as the baseline, and being top 4 while transitioning over to mid would be a big thing. And again, even if Fudge is learning how to speak Korean, I think it's going to be hard for him to balance between that and learning how to play League. So I think that's one of my biggest problems with that. Fudge struggles a lot with basic mechanics on League already, and it's one of the most demanding roles with that. Again, he's mechanically gifted, but again, at the same time...
I think his play style, the type of player he is actually is just as good as mid lane, honestly. As Warren said earlier.
One of his biggest issues I saw was he tried freezing. Guys, you can't... I've explained this in my video that you'll see. You cannot freeze the way you do in top lane. First of all, the lane's longer, so it pans out better in top lane. That's just a base example, right? In mid lane, the reason why you don't freeze like that is because if you are playing, let's say there's a matchup, right? And let's say I'm playing Syndra, and let's say you're playing Orianna, and let's say I get the better of you in a matchup, and you try freezing, and I shove you in. That means at that current moment in time, if I'm stronger than you, I can go around the map and do whatever I want. I could invade with my jungler. I could go bot lane and dive them. I can go top lane and dive your enemy opposition. It's kind of like I'm playing chess, you're playing checkers kind of thing. It's you always try to be as proactive as you can. Now, if Fudge tries the same thing he tries top lane, it's not going to work. It literally fundamentally will not work. If he tries to freeze like that, you are going to get clapped.
Well, hold on. Listen, don't worry. They have a plan for that, right? LS is going to say Ivern mid is very good, so he can clear the waves out easy.
And I just don't think at his peak he'll be better than players like Bjergsen, PoE, Abadagi. I just don't think he will. You know? If he's a top 4 mid laner, I'm glad. That's fine, honestly. But that's me hoping a lot. I'm hoping a lot for that to happen. Because at his peak, is he better than Bjergsen? Probably not. Is he better than Abadagi? Probably not. PoE.
Yeah, he's gonna pick Annie every single game.
Yeah, I think he could be good as PoE. I don't know.
It could. I mean, who knows? He might be really good.
Power People's very good.
And Abadagi, dropped off a bit, like near the very end of summer and a bit of
What's
the
up, Benjamin?
playoffs. It was mostly closer doing the work.
How you
honestly.
doing, Benjamin? LS will put Fudge on Seraphine duty. Holy shit.
Sorry.
Ellis is gonna put Fudge on the bench soon enough. That's where he's going.
Hey, he suggested a better top laner for Cloud9. So he knew Fudge wasn't as good top lane. He suggested a better guy for them.
Well, I don't think the performance dip is that huge for Fudge and Summit, and I think Fudge can still grow more. And Summit might have communication issues with not understanding English. So if it doesn't work out, that's why I think they could pick Fudge still over Summit and then like get in Jensen or Niski.
I think what's up?
I was going to say the better question is, do you think NA lost this offseason?
Oh, pretty hard.
NA?
Well, so this is the last thing I'll talk about before I have to go to bed. So basically, here's how it works. Teams cut back on their spending because if you keep spending the way teams were doing, the league is going to implode if certain organizations don't make money. So you saw teams cutting back a lot and trying the European approach, grabbing unknown talent, essentially picking academy players for your roster or players that you would never take a gamble on in any year except for this one because they're trying to inherently cut down on spending because if you spend too much and the league doesn't make money, the teams would implode. I think that's the reason why the offseason this year looks weaker than a lot of the other years, actually.
It's not come down to just purely money. It's about the fact that the lower teams can't spend as much money. It's not about the amount of money. It's more about the fact that there is limitation on which the top teams versus in comparison to the bottom teams. What actually would make this work is if there's a salary cap and if you actually demand, because in a lot of sports, if they make an all-pro team, they have a limitation on the minimum of which you can pay them. And that would limit how often we'd seed super teams like this, which would suck. But it would also demand a lot of these teams, instead of bringing in like imports and stuff like that, they would start grabbing lower tier teams, lower tier players, like even like bad players from like other regions or like or challenger players from other regions. Like they'd be grabbing more challenger players instead of just grabbing veterans that don't usually pan out.
Yeah, because it's really money that's dictating how these super teams are coming together. Like the owner just throws a shitload of money at them and they just come over.
Steve
has Disney on his side, so it's not really fair.
I like both sides. I like both like the cap things and this. I don't mind either, so I wouldn't mind that. However, esports fans,
LPL is one of the reasons why Bibli didn't get Knight and Uzi on the same team.
Yeah.
There's a reason why that didn't happen.
I don't mind it, but esports fans were as pissy with that stuff as.
Oh, so
I don't know. A lot of teams, a lot of people just like to see super teams because, again, the most exciting thing about League is when you see a lot of these players come on to the point where they're just all of the players are playing at the best, and one of the teams is just like, this is the best team of all time. Everybody wants to experience that, and that's why they like super teams. But again, I hate them. They're not fun because the rest of the region has to suffer because the rest of it kind of funnels all of the best players into one. Like we look at the G2 roster that was absolutely incredible for like 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That team had every single one of their players was like the best in their role or arguably top 2.
Mm-hmm. And
it always kind of essentially made the rest of the region, again, it made the rest of the region stronger, but it also made them to where they can't really compete except for Fnatic. Like Fnatic, again, always made it work. I never knew how they did it. But there's always going to be a problem with putting no limitation on which players can be picked. Because, again, the bottom tier teams, like I'm not going to give up $3 million to go play on a team that I think is better. I'm going to pick that $3 million and go to whatever team that is. And that team is always going to be the richer team. They're always going to spend more.
And that's the thing is like, I think it's a combination of not making enough money, but I think it's a combination of what's the incentive to spend all that money if you know you're not going to even make playoffs or get like 6th place? Like there's no incentive for like CLG, FlyQuest, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, and those are the bottom teams, right? Immortals. So you have Immortals, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, FlyQuest, and CLG. What's the incentive for them to spend all that money? Because they're not going to win anyway.
The incentive is literally just if I bought Faker and I was Dignitas, the sales, like again, it's all about attracting other players.
Yeah.
If you spend money, you can get these other players to come because you can build a roster. Be like, hey, I'm about to. If you sign up, Faker says he'll come, and then you do that. Every single player, you continually tell them these things to where you get a roster lined up with all these players. Like it makes sense in theory. And that's why when you do trades between 3 teams, you can essentially talk through it. You don't trade from one team, say, hey, I'm going to trade this guy for this guy if you give me this guy. They all have to trade at once. Like, all of these things fall into line when you essentially make it to where all these pieces know that you're going to have a team built. But you can only do it if you get somebody to say yes. Like, I think NA doesn't suffer is because of the fact that there's so many. You have to put 2 NA players on each team, and that makes them bad inherently. So you can always make a team as good as them.
Yeah, China found a way. Just build up your home region talent, and then if you want to import, then
maybe if NA had 6 billion people in like China, it would
playing
make
league at
sense.
least. Oh yeah,
like China's legitimately like a national sport over there. Where if I say that I watch league competitively inside of public, I'm gonna get beat up in the parking lot. That's completely different scenarios over here. Like,
if I say I watch league, people just look at you funny, like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is a league? You know?
Well, when you say league, they'll think you're talking about soccer because of the Premier League. But,
well, like if you say you watch competitive esports in America, people look at you like, wait, what? That's a thing? Like the average casual person thinks that.
Like, I think one thing I like about the fact that a salary cap would be introduced is not because of the current situation in NA, because right now, all these super teams either don't work out or all that stuff because the infrastructure isn't there to make these teams good. But a future tense, if this league is going to succeed and these teams get a little more fleshed out idea of how they're going to work, I think these super teams would inherently be a bad idea. And getting the jump on that and not letting them just put 5 fakers on a team from other reasons is a good idea. I mean, we can essentially have these people like NA residents, because the actual way which what's it called? Residency works now is essentially just getting a green card, which is not nearly as long as, I mean, again, it's a long process, but again, it's a little bit easier than the 3 years for residency you had to do for like Bjergsen and all them. I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with the salary cap, but right now I don't think it's necessary. It's just something I would hope for the future.
The last thing I'll say is, guys, it's just not necessary for teams like the ones I've mentioned to spend that much money. If like they spend that much money and their highest placing during any playoffs could be like 6th place, like it's just not financially the best decision. Nor is it financially worth it to spend that much money on a roster and just fail like that. You know, like the best thing they can do is just build up NA talent and then just sell them off to the bigger teams, or build a team around that player. That's all the decisions or the choices you have in those moment in time. You know, it's like if you can't compete with C9, TSM, Team Liquid, and now 100 Thieves, like what are you really doing? I mean, EG is trying. Evil Geniuses is trying to do that with this roster that they have this year. You know, and I hope it all works out. I mean, I can't wait until, you know, it starts up again, you know, next month in January for the lock-in tournament, and then you have LEC starting as well. And yeah, that's it. Anything else you guys want to say before we head out?
No.
Do you like me?
No.
Okay.
I don't think the other two are you guys still here?
Me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, my mic went off randomly.
Do you want to have sex with my wife?
No.
I wouldn't. Anybody who says yes to you is not somebody I want to talk to. I'm sorry.
So that's pretty much it, guys.
I don't with your pillow.
All right. I have a video coming out later on tomorrow, actually, and yeah, that's it. The next one of these should be doing solo, so it should be like doing a power ranking and tier list for the LEC, and then one for the LCS, and then we'll see what else happens. Actually, that's it. I'll see you guys later. And goodbye. Have a good night. Actually, if you guys watch this on the replay, make sure you like the stream, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, do all that fun stuff that I would know you guys would help me out with, because you guys love me so much. Oh, I hope Cloud9 know what they're doing. Holy, thank you, Sean. I hope Cloud9 know what they're doing. Holy shit, I hope you know what they're doing. Remember, Cloud9's always lost the offseason. They've always lost the offseason, though. So, all right, guys. Peace. See you later. Good night.